Chapter 524. After that, there was a long period of silence. The world was quiet as Immortal Zhenyuan and his heart demon Wind Spirit looked up at the sky. Because Little Master Ling's mind-reading ability was currently connected to Loopy Toad had clearly heard Wang Ling's telepathic message to the Heavenly Tao. If it wasn't for the fact that there were outsiders here, Loopy Toad felt that it wouldn't have been able to keep its expression straight. Its little master had actually directly roared back at the Heavenly Tao. What kind of operation was this? Wang Ling, who had turned invisible, also gazed at the sky, which had returned to tranquility, and sighed deeply in his heart. Sure enough, in this day and age, you still had to rely on roaring, Loopy Toad. What if *** King roaring? On the other side, Immortal Zhenyuan and Wind Spirit, the product of his inner demon, were practically thinking the same thing. Immortal Zhenyuan. Wind Spirit. Who could tell them what had just happened? A moment later, Wind Spirit couldn't help sucking in a cold breath. ***K. His big one had actually been cut off. No. To be more precise, it was as if his big one had directly disappeared. This scene had been too sudden, and neither Immortal Zhenyuan nor his inner demon had expected it. Just a few seconds ago, after Immortal Zhenyuan's gravity had been restored, he had used his immortal eye to see that the God-exploding heavenly stars spell was still in progress. Not only had the entire drought star been sealed in vicious chi, even the ground had started to collapse like crazy. However, in just the time it took to stare at it, all the unusual movements disappeared completely in the blink of an eye. Throughout the entire process, Immortal Zhenyuan had been using his immortal eye to check on the vicious chi surrounding drought star. He didn't know if it was an illusion. The red-haired young man felt that rather than saying that the vicious chi enveloping drought star had disappeared, it was better to say that it had fled. It was as if it had encountered some natural enemy or prehistoric beast, and had instantly retreated without a trace. So, this was Senior Dog's doing. At that moment, both of their gazes involuntarily turned to Loopy Toad. It was very obvious. Because they didn't know anything about this Senior Dog, who had appeared with the golden light shield, at all. But the problem was, Senior Dog didn't move at all. Since the moment he appeared, he had been floating in the air. No matter how the environment around him changed, he was like a terracotta army. He stood calmly in the air with his eyes closed, and he used the most relaxed posture to neutralize Wind Spirit's attacks. This was a 12th-stage spell. The power of a level 11 spell was enough to destroy a planet. Even an idiot would know how powerful a 12th-grade spell was. If Wind Spirit's divine explosion of heavenly stars had succeeded, it wouldn't just be Drought Star. The link between the human world and the demon realm would also be destroyed, and in the worst-case scenario, the force of the explosion might directly rush out through the gate to another world, causing great damage to both worlds. Although it wouldn't be completely destroyed, if it were to explode, the consequences would be unimaginable. In that moment, Immortal Zhenyuan suddenly felt the real gap between realms. He thought that after cultivating to the immortal venerable realm, he was already standing at the peak of the world. However, there was still a mountain higher than the mountain. Immortal Zhenyuan surmised that this Senior Dog's strength was at least at Sage Immortal level. This was a realm above Venerable Immortal. It was a whole level higher than Venerable Immortal. Rumor had it that a Sage Immortal Almighty had at least 81 heavenly Tao in their bodies. Furthermore, these 81 heavenly Tao were the minimum requirement to become a Sage Immortal, only a Sage Immortal with 81 heavenly Tao. Immortal Zhenyuan pondered in his heart as he wondered how many heavenly Tao Senior Dog had in its body. To be able to neutralize the attack of a 12th grade spell so easily, the number of heavenly Tao in its body had to be more than 100 at the very least. At this thought, Immortal Zhenyuan couldn't help clicking his tongue repeatedly in his heart. He never thought that there would actually be a Sage Immortal expert in this world who was stronger than a Venerable Immortal. How big was the gap between a Venerable Immortal and a Sage Immortal? Take the simplest example. For example, Immortal Jin Yuan could freely travel through the Milky Way and even move a planet over. However, celestial sages could create their own planets. One was a planet porter, the other could create a planet. That was the difference. To build a planet, it was far from enough to just learn how to create a small world and a great world, because it also involved the shaping of a star core and filling in the nomological framework. These were things that could only be created after mastering multiple heavenly Tao. The red-haired young man felt that he was still far from that level. Sure enough, if you didn't compare yourself to a strong expert, you would never recognize the gap between you and them. He didn't even move, yet he easily disintegrated a Tier 12 spell. Maybe this was what a big shot was like. While the red-haired young man felt extremely disappointed, a fire was ignited in his heart once again. It looked like he would have to closely follow in Senior Dog's footsteps in the future. At that moment, the red-haired young man's eyes were already full of stars as he prostrated himself in reverence toward Loopy Toad. Senior Dog 1, do you accept disciples? Wang Ling, Loopy Toad, on the other side of the sky, Wind Spirit gritted his teeth fiercely at this scene, and the hostility in his heart bubbled up again. For some reason, when he saw the red-haired young man's expression toward a dog, he couldn't suppress the rage in his heart. Why? Wind Spirit suddenly roared. His chest heaved up and down as he gasped for breath, anger surging in his chest. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad. Wind Spirit's eyes were fixed on the red-haired young man on the other side. Why, you never showed it to me. Immortal Jin Yuan was startled. Why should I? Wang Ling, Loopy Toad couldn't help letting out a huh in its heart. Wind Spirit, I was talking about your expression. Immortal Jin Yuan, to be honest, after seeing his grade 12 spell inexplicably neutralized by Senior Dog, Wind Spirit knew that he already had no chance of winning this fight. Because this was already his most powerful killing move, and also his final trump card. A moment later, Immortal Jin Yuan stared at Wind Spirit and couldn't help sighing softly. Wind Spirit, are you jealous? Because it hadn't completely materialized, Wind Spirit's facial features weren't fully formed, and only a rough outline could be seen. Wind Spirit instantly clenched his teeth as if he had been poked in a sore spot. Jealous? You say I'm jealous? Why should I be jealous? You created me, and now you're doing everything you can to destroy me. He lowered his head gloomily, his whole body trembling. So, I won't let you off easy. In the next moment, Wind Spirit moved again. He pounced directly at Immortal Jin Yuan, wanting to hug him. At that moment, Wang Ling, who had turned incorporeal, suddenly sensed the strange energy inside Wind Spirit's body condensing like crazy. Did he want to self-destruct? Wang Ling raised his hand and cast the Great Suppression spell. Wind Spirit's entire body froze, and at the same time, he felt the restless energy in his body calm down once again. It wasn't just his body, even his aura and realm had regressed in that instant. At that moment, the red-haired young man stared at the heart demon incarnation which was only a few meters away from him, and was slightly absent-minded. Still not attacking. At that moment, Loopy Toad couldn't help reminding him. Now that Wind Spirit was completely suppressed and even his realm had regressed, this was the best chance for Immortal Jin Yuan to kill him with his own hands. Because of what Wind Spirit had said earlier, Immortal Jin Yuan was also pondering it in his heart. I'm sorry, Wind Spirit, you shouldn't have appeared in this world. Immortal Jin Yuan stretched out one hand and pressed it against Wind Spirit's hair, which looked a little like a caress. Wang Ling noticed that at that moment, the red-haired young man was smiling at Wind Spirit. Wind Spirit already couldn't hold back his tears. Boom! In the next moment, there was the sound of an explosion from Immortal Jin Yuan's palm. This person, whom Immortal Jin Yuan had been entangled with for a long time and whom he called Wind Spirit. Chapter 525. This world was full of all kinds of helplessness to begin with. Before Jin Yuan had truly and thoroughly destroyed Wind Spirit, he had hated it to the bone. This was an energy body that had transformed from his inner demon, and had the same memories and abilities as him. Even after it had taken on a physical form, it had the same appearance as him. Wind Spirit's existence was like a mirror, except that it reflected the darkest side of immortal Jin Yuan's heart. Everyone had a dark side. Even the peerless cultivators and the righteous swordsmen who roamed the Jianghu with swords all had dark sides. Because where there was light, there was always darkness. There were also places where light couldn't be found. However, when it came to dark things, people's first instinct in the depths of their hearts was always to escape. That was their most unreal self, and also their truest self. Thus, after the primordial chi had filled his body, the inner demon had evolved into Wind Spirit, and immortal Jin Yuan had always thought of a way to kill it. However, after Wind Spirit had truly been reduced to ashes, he had felt a little lonely in his heart. It was a very strange feeling that he couldn't put into words. But the moment he had killed Wind Spirit, the red-haired young man had felt a little heartache. This scene also made the incorporeal Wang Ling ponder deeply. But after destroying the inner demon, did it disappear completely? Of course not. The inner demon always existed, and couldn't be completely destroyed. A lot of the time, powerful cultivators in high positions would choose to go into seclusion for a long time, not to advance their realms, but to stabilize their minds and suppress their inner demons. Desires were always endless. After reaching a new height, they would always want to break through to the next level. As long as you were on the path of cultivation and growth, you would definitely encounter all kinds of things that would prompt the birth of your inner demon. Immortal Jin Yuan's inner demon was just a product of an accidental mutation, and it wasn't just because the primordial chi had cleansed his mind. This was just one of the reasons, and the specific reason for it was unknown, but this incident gave Wang Ling a wake-up call. Did he have an inner demon? Of course he did. It was just that the primordial chi was currently controlling his emotions. If the primordial chi was truly controllable one day, an inner demon would be born. The greatest courage a person could muster at this time was to face their own darkness head-on. And the hardest thing for a person to break through was to surpass himself. He wondered how he would deal with an inner demon like Wind Spirit in the future. To be honest, after dealing with Wind Spirit, it wasn't just immortal Jin Yuan, even Wang Ling and Loopy Toad sank into a long melancholy. This lesson was very real and very profound. Sometimes, the lessons brought about by a battle were far more profound than what was taught in textbooks or in class. As the saying goes, true knowledge comes from practice. The same logic applied to cultivators now. But in a society where the rule of law was universal, the younger generation of cultivators in Wang Ling's generation basically learned mostly theory. Apart from the agriculture, military training, and actual combat classes, which were arranged by schools every year, there were really too few opportunities for them to engage in actual combat training. Moreover, the most important premise of these officially arranged practical training was safety. But this was precisely the most insignificant part. Not so long ago, heroes had always been born in troubled times in the cultivation world. Every year at the National Cultivators Congress, representatives would propose increasing the number of opportunities for practical training and setting the difficulty of it. As long as it wasn't fatal, it didn't matter if one was seriously injured. Because no matter how serious an injury was, modern cultivation technology and all kinds of elixirs could be used to recover without leaving any sequelae. A lot of people felt that the younger generation of modern cultivators were mostly flowers raised in a greenhouse. Although it was a pretty good era of peace now, who could guarantee that this peace would last forever? The red-haired young man floated in the air. After exterminating Wind Spirit, his palm didn't fall, but stared in the direction in which it had disappeared and pondered for a long time. During this time, Wang Ling had already collected the energy source on Drought Star according to the designated coordinates using the energy harvester he had given to him. Wang Ling didn't know whether this abnormal energy source was primordial chi or some other special kind of energy. Furthermore, it was too thin and there were a lot of other gases mixed in here. Wang Ling couldn't make an accurate judgment, and would only know after Wang Ming compared it with the equipment. When Wang Ling came back with the energy, he noticed that the red-haired young man who had been deep in thought in the air was actually holding a red diamond-shaped crystal in his hand. The red-haired young man broke out in a sweat as he asked Loopy Toad, "Senior Dog, do you know what this is?" The red-haired young man had also suddenly seen this crystal. Not long after Wind Spirit had been exterminated, he had noticed glittering dust gathering in the air, and then slowly coalescing into a crystal like this. The corners of Loopy Toad's mouth twitched. Sage. Sage stone. Wang Ling. Goddamn sage stone. Wang Ling felt that this crystal looked a little familiar. He searched his memory bank based on the crystal structure, and then found something called a heart demon stone, which was very similar to this crystal. He sent a telepathic message to Loopy Toad, and it was responsible for passing on the message. "Do you know about the heart demon stone?" Heart demon stone. Immortal Jinyuan was blank. In order to find a way to restrain Wind Spirit, he had looked up a lot of information on heart demons, and it seemed that he had seen some information on this heart demon stone. Unfortunately, all the information he had looked through were ancient texts, and there wasn't even a single picture of it. Now that he was reminded, very quickly, the red-haired young man recalled something. So this is the heart demon stone. This was an energy crystal obtained after eliminating the heart demon. It was mainly composed of 90% solid primordial qi and 10% rare metal elements. According to the ancient texts, the heart demon stone could be used for cultivation. After defeating the heart demon, you could cultivate with the help of the stone. If you held the stone in your mouth during a battle, you could even directly increase the concentration of your primordial qi and increase the power of your spells. The heart demon stone was very rare. Furthermore, basically anything that could be found in ancient texts from that era couldn't be bought in the modern cultivation world. Immortal Jinyuan sighed. This was his only gain from eliminating Wind Spirit this time, but for some reason, he still couldn't be happy. At that moment, the red-haired young man suddenly turned his head to look at Loopy Toad. "By the way, how did Senior Dog get here?" Loopy Toad looked away, not daring to meet the red-haired young man's gaze. "I just happened to pass by." Nonsense. It couldn't answer that it had been brought here by the toilet, right? Chapter 526. Loopy Toad's answer was actually quite ambiguous, but out of respect for Senior Dog, the red-haired young man didn't think too much about it. Sometimes, it was really possible that he had made a small mistake while traveling through space and accidentally fell down to save the world. Actually, it was possible that he had saved the world. There were too many things in this world that couldn't be explained with common sense. Moreover, Jinyuan felt in his heart that big shots generally had very unique ways of thinking. Senior Dog definitely had its own unique reasons for being able to cultivate to such a high realm. On the other side, Wang Ling had already collected the gas data that Wang Ming had given him, and was going to let Loopy Toad go. To be honest, this fight with Wind Spirit this time had given Wang Ling a deep understanding of the strength of a venerated immortal, which was actually a little disappointing. He had thought that a venerated immortal was already very strong, but unfortunately, this level of combat strength wasn't enough at all. Although a venerated immortal had already begun to master the use of Heavenly Tao, their comprehension of it was still far from enough. To be proficient in a Heavenly Tao, one had to spend a lot of effort to cultivate it. Furthermore, when it came to comprehending a Heavenly Tao, it actually depended a lot on luck. That was because a Heavenly Tao was divided into many characteristics, and the strongest characteristic of all Heavenly Tao was that it was proficient in everything. Of the 3,000 great spells that Wang Ling had currently mastered, all of his characteristics were of the highest level. So there were times when even Wang Ling himself felt that he was a little too strong. Wang Ling had originally wanted to ask more about the Immortal's treasure house, but after the battle, he instantly lost all interest. At that moment, Loopy Toad couldn't help asking the red-haired young man, "What are you going to do after this?" This wasn't Wang Ling's question, but Dog 2's own. Jin Yuan pinched the heart demon stone and sighed. "I'll use this heart demon stone to restore Drought Star to how it was before." "You're quite obsessed with finding a second planet." Loopy Toad smiled. "There's nothing I can do about it." The red-haired young man shrugged his shoulders. While he seemed to speak very casually, he actually felt a little regretful in his heart. Although there's still a long time before the spirit chi of heaven and earth is completely used up, given the current rate of extraction of the Earth's environment, it might be destroyed before the spirit chi is used up. Senior should know this better than me, right? Loopy Toad turned its face away a little awkwardly. Of course, although all the countries have signed the International True Immortal Convention to protect the spirit chi of heaven and earth as much as possible, the damage to the environment is real, said Immortal Jin Yuan. The International True Immortal Convention that he mentioned was an agreement signed by all the countries in the world. All the true immortal experts had put their fingerprints on it and swore an oath. According to the convention, in order to protect the spirit chi of heaven and earth that had been overexploited on earth, all perfected immortals were not allowed to use the samsara spirit tribulation to ascend to immortal venerables. On one hand, the samsara spirit tribulation consumed too much spiritual chi of heaven and earth. It was very likely that the spiritual chi of an area would be sucked dry in a short period of time, resulting in a spiritual chi hole. As a result, a large amount of spiritual chi was lost along with the hole. On the other hand, there were currently no immortal venerable powerhouses among the leaders of the various countries. Therefore, advancing from a true immortal to an immortal venerable was actually a move that broke the balance of power between the countries. And in order to achieve long-term peace in the modern cultivation world, the International True Immortal Convention was born. So the truth was that General Yi, Marshal Jiang, Secretary Sun Dakong, President Qi, Minister Shi, the 10 founding generals actually had enough resources to advance to venerable immortal level. However, these resources referred to materials other than spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Only spiritual chi of heaven and earth was special. It was a product of nature, and once it was used up, it would be difficult to maintain. Thus, there were currently two major research topics in the scientific world. The first was, how to develop a new method for true immortals to advance to venerable immortal level without using the old method of extracting the spirit chi of heaven and earth like the samsara spirit tribulation, without putting too much burden on the natural environment. The second was, whether it was possible to develop an instrument that could replace spiritual chi of heaven and earth, or generate it. These two studies sounded easy, but they were in fact very difficult. Every 6 months, all the major countries would hold a joint meeting of experts to share and discuss their research. So far, however, there had been no practical solutions, and many of the theories put forward were even fantastical and unworkable. Given this premise, there were in fact a lot of people like Immortal Jin Yuan who wanted to develop a second planet. Wang Ling knew quite a bit about this. This was the first time he had ever scored full marks in a science class in junior high school, and it was also the first time in his life that he had ever scored 100. Furthermore, Father Wang hadn't blamed him for doing so well. Because at that time, everyone in his class had scored 100. You created the gate between worlds to hide this drought star that you found. Also, I heard that the gate between worlds has descended on the human world dozens of times. Was it because you were conducting an improved version of the test? At that moment, Loopy Toad asked a very important question. It would have been better if it hadn't asked this question, but when it did, Immortal Jin Yuan started to sigh in his heart again, as expected of Senior Dog. It even knew that it was the one who had invented the gate between worlds. Senior, you misunderstand. I invented the gate between worlds purely to build a bridge between the demon world and the human cultivation world. If I really wanted to deal with the spirit chi of heaven and earth, I thought it would be a good idea to connect with the demon world and discuss countermeasures with them. But little did I know that the gate between worlds could be used. Speaking up to this point, Immortal Jinyuan sighed. The last few times it suddenly descended, it was all because of wind spirit. In the end, the rumor was that I was the one doing a performance test for the gate between worlds. So this was the truth. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad nodded inwardly. Wang Ling could directly tell that Immortal Jinyuan wasn't lying. Actually, this actually made sense. Given Jinyuan's personality, summoning the gate between worlds to destroy a city didn't make sense to begin with. Before leaving, Loopy Toad sighed and looked at the extent of Drought Star's damage. The battle just now had already destroyed 1/6 of Drought Star's surface. 1/6 might seem small, but Drought Star was an entire planet. Even if it was smaller than Earth, it was still a huge area. Young man, work hard. Before leaving, Dog 2 pretended to be proud of its age and experience as it greeted Jinyuan. In fact, in some ways, it wasn't just Dog 2, even Wang Ling actually had a good impression of Immortal Jinyuan. Nowadays, there were too few people who chose to quietly sacrifice themselves for the greater good of humanity. Although choosing to move to the second planet was a pretty extreme idea, at the very least, Jinyuan was contributing to the sustainable development of humanity in the future. Senior, wait. At that moment, the red-haired young man called out to it. Senior Dog. Will we ever meet again? Loopy Toad turned its head. We'll see when the time comes. At that moment, Wang Ling was already stamping his foot. As long as they dodged 3 times, Lord Ma would send them back. Senior Dog. This is for you. As soon as he said that, the red-haired young man threw a jade pendant at Loopy Toad, which caught it firmly with its dog paw. The moment it saw the jade pendant, Wang Ling's eyes lit up. Chapter 527. Wang Ling hadn't expected Immortal Jinyuan to actually hand over his immortal seal so generously. This was something that could only be condensed after reaching the true immortal realm, and represented the power of faith. There was usually a difference between a main seal and a branch seal. Generally speaking, an immortal seal was given to a believer or disciple to use to summon the owner of the seal when they prayed in a critical moment. But Jinyuan didn't dare be careless. He was extremely respectful of Senior Dog, so he directly handed over his main seal. The biggest difference between a branch seal and a branch seal was that the owner of the seal had to decide whether or not to show up after praying. But once the owner of the main seal decided to summon it, no matter where they were or what they were doing, they would be directly teleported over. This was a venerated immortal's main immortal seal. When Loopy Toad held the immortal seal, it did its best to suppress the churning emotions in its heart. Immortal Jinyuan was very polite. Senior Dog, please don't stand on ceremony, you must accept this immortal seal. This time, thanks to Senior's blessings, this world has been saved in Drought Star, which I worked so hard to find. This Junior has nothing to repay you with. Senior Dog, please keep this immortal seal. If Senior is busy, you can summon me at any time. You want to run errands for me? Loopy Toad was startled. However, the red-haired young man's answer was simpler and more brutal than Loopy Toad had imagined. No. I want to be Senior's dog. Loopy Toad, Wang Ling, Wang Ming waited in the room for a while. Sitting cross-legged on Wang Ling's bed, he couldn't help feeling a little excited as he thought about something. After so many years of studying primordial qi, he had finally made progress, which was great news for him personally. Actually, before Wang Ling had taken the collector to collect it, Wang Ming had already guessed in his heart that this special energy source was definitely primordial qi, but he still needed to compare it with Wang Ling's primordial qi based on the data from the experiment. Otherwise, if it wasn't, where would he put his face as the strongest brain? In the end, Wang Ling came back a little earlier than Wang Ming had imagined. In less than half an hour, Lord Ma had brought Wang Ling and Loopy Toad back. Wang Ming came to the bathroom door and sniffed, then said, "Did you guys fight?" Loopy Toad was surprised and looked up at him. "How did you know?" "There's a smell of gunpowder on you," Wang Ming said. "We do research and do experiments, and we have to make all kinds of reagents, so our sense of smell is also very important. Don't look at me like this, my sense of smell has actually been strengthened. There is a chip inside that can multiply my sense of smell. In fact, my sense of smell is not necessarily weaker than that of those cultivators." "About what level?" Loopy Toad asked with great interest. "The chip will definitely be upgraded in the future. My current sense of smell is barely at the nascent soul stage," Wang Ming answered proudly. Loopy Toad thought this was already very awesome. It was rather unbelievable that an ordinary person could improve his sense of smell to the level of the nascent soul stage with a chip that could strengthen the sense of smell. But very quickly, Loopy Toad suddenly realized a problem and looked at Wang Ming in amazement. "How can you see, little master?" Wang Ling was now in his intangible state. But it was as if Wang Ming had seen Wang Ling and greeted him normally. Furthermore, this intangible state couldn't be cancelled midway. It had to wait for 12 hours to run out. So Loopy Toad was very puzzled. How could this guy see him? Wang Ming spread his hands, crouched down, and rubbed Loopy Toad's head as he sighed. If you've ever been stared at by a dead fish's eyes, even if he's completely invisible next to you, you can actually sense it through your sixth sense. In fact, Wang Ming preferred to call this feeling, Brother Con intuition. Loopy Toad, Wang Ling. In this incorporeal state, everything Wang Ling touched would become incorporeal, including the collector in his hand, so he simply put it on the table and let Wang Ming pick it up himself. "Take it, I'll look for you later if there's anything." Wang Ming sighed inwardly. When he got back this time, he would be locked up for a period of time. He couldn't go back on his promise to old Chi. The soonest he could come back again would be a month later. Ling Ling. Wang Ming put the collector away. He guessed that Wang Ling was sitting in the chair in front of the desk, so he stretched out his hand to feel Wang Ling's soft hair. In his intangible state, Wang Ling was completely invisible. No scientific instrument, cultivation spell, or eye technique would be able to detect him, and even his aura would disappear completely. But this intangible state could be touched. So when Wang Ming touched himself, Wang Ling sweated in his heart. He could actually touch himself like this. He suddenly wondered if Wang Ming had a pair of eyes that could only see him. Loopy Toad looked at Wang Ming and sked. "You're really amazing, what's so special about it?" "I pretty much know his habits. Don't look at how I'm only grabbing his hair now, I can also pinch anywhere else." As he spoke, Wang Ming flexed his slender fingers and gestured as he spoke. The corner of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. In its heart, Loopy Toad started to sigh with emotion at the breadth and depth of Washoe culture. Although its language wasn't good, it still knew a thing or two about rhetoric and word analysis. The word pinch had been used well. Wang Ling had used precise words to deeply portray the inseparable and strong brotherly feelings between the two brothers. Unstained from the mud, untainted from the water, unenchanted from the ripples. It sounded very dirty, but in fact, it was a little elegant. "By the way, what kind of trouble did you run into over there?" Wang Ming returned to the topic at hand. He had originally just wanted to tease Wang Ling. Since he couldn't come back for a month, teasing him a little before leaving was simply too good. How could he normally have this kind of opportunity to tease Wang Ling up close? Loopy Toad didn't have anything to hide, and simply told Wang Ling about Immortal Jin Yuan and Wind Spirit. Wang Ming sked in amazement when he heard this. It turns out that this big shot Immortal Jin Yuan really does exist. I always thought it was just someone else bragging. Loopy Toad nodded. That's right, big bro, I was also very shocked. Wang Ming, but according to what you said, Immortal Jin Yuan's Wind Spirit was also a venerated immortal. It shouldn't have been easy to deal with, right? Why did you two come back in less than 30 minutes? Loopy Toad narrowed its eyes. Big bro, have you ever played a MOBA game? Wong Ming, Loopy Toad, have you ever seen a one-sided game last more than 30 minutes? Chapter 528. Jai Yin had initially set a time limit for Wang Ming's visit this time, and couldn't stay at the Wang family's house for too long. However, they had already run out of time while waiting for him to use the collector to collect the energy source, but Jai Yin hadn't come up to urge him. This was all thanks to Mother Wang's godly assistance downstairs. Two women in a play, as long as there was a point of entry, there would be a lot of topics to explore between them. After all, before Mother Wang had officially become a housewife, she had been Numinous Mother, a powerful novelist who had inadvertently taught two epic-level killers. Furthermore, she had a very high EQ and was very talkative. Once she started talking, there was no stopping her. It wasn't until Wang Ming came downstairs that Jai Yin realized that she had run out of time. Before leaving, Jai Yin added Mother Wang on WeChat. This was Jai Yin's private account, which Wang Ming also had. Jai Yin had forced him to add it. Jai Yin didn't have any WeChat moments. Apart from forwarding some major official announcements, she didn't have any private messages. After entering the research institute in particular, it had already been several months since she had posted anything new. Thank you, sister. Standing at the door, Jai Yin gave Mother Wang a military salute. You're welcome. Come by often when you have time. Mother Wang smiled, and as Jai Yin turned to leave, she said, I wish you success. Jai Yin blushed, but Wang Ming felt baffled. She usually had a gloomy expression on her face, but now her cheeks were flushed. Wang Ming felt that Jai Yin was actually a little feminine at that moment. Although Wang Ming usually liked to joke about Jai Yin's gender, to be honest, Jai Yin was actually quite pretty. Both long and short hair were distinctive. Perhaps because she had been in the army for a long time, Jai Yin still liked to keep her hair short and unisex. It wasn't as short as a buzz cut, but it wasn't as long as the ear-length hair that women usually wore. When they got into the car, Wang Ming heard Jai Yin humming a little tune. He was startled and felt that Jai Yin wasn't herself today. What are you and my aunt talking about downstairs? Why are you so happy? It's nothing, it's just a normal academic discussion. Jai Yin started the car and gripped the steering wheel, her face quickly returning to its usual cool demeanor. Wang Ming, about what? Jai Yin said succinctly, men. After hearing this, Wang Ming shuddered. Then my aunt, what did she say? Auntie and I have discussed it in many ways, and we agree that if you want to capture a man's heart, you must first capture their stomach. When Jai Yin said this, she couldn't help glancing at Wang Ming out of the corner of her eye. I was just talking to Auntie about the 2.0 upgraded version of the dragon pork chop. When we get back to the station, I'll fry it for you to try. Wang Ming was on the verge of tears. Big sister. I beg you, I still want to live a few more years, and contribute to the country. Jai Yin pursed his lips. Don't worry, I'll give it to old chief first before giving it to you. Wang Ming was even more frightened. Then don't, big sister, you have to think twice. Jai Yin. Wang Ming, murdering the 10 founding generals, is a major crime. Jai Yin, July 16th, the 12th Sunday of the semester. Loopy Toad ran off again that morning, but Wang Ling knew about it. Before leaving this time, Loopy Toad had told Wang Ling that it was going to look for Little Silver. Wang Ling had never had any objections to Loopy Toad and Little Silver's interaction. Dog 2 didn't have many friends to begin with, and Little Silver had just entered the city and was more of a homebody, so it was actually good for them to get to know each other more. Furthermore, Wang Ling had Loopy Toad bring the Spirit Beast, Holy Beast, contract to Dog 2 this time when Dog 2 was looking for Little Silver. Little Silver had been waiting for this contract for a long time. It just so happened that the midterm exams were almost over, and there were basically only a few subjects left. After Wang Ming and Jai Yin left last night, Wang Ling had straightaway drafted the contract. This could be considered an explanation for Little Silver. After the midterm exams were officially over next week and the district sports meet was over, there would be a very long period of leisure before the final exams. Not long after Dog 2 left, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sent him a message. Wang Ling skimmed through the contents of the message. The gist of it was that his and Little Silver's plan to look for President by last night had failed. There were a lot of reasons for this. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal guessed that there might have been a problem somewhere, and some information had been leaked in advance. In short, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Little Silver had made a wasted trip last night, and hadn't been able to draw out that President by. Wang Ling stared at the message and sighed. As expected, this was a cunning person who wasn't easy to deal with. What kind of people were the hardest to deal with? Scheming people were the hardest to deal with. The old devil had been caught because of love, the master of Immortal Mansion had been caught because of his conceit, and Evil Sword God had been caught because of his chinibu. But from what Wang Ling knew of these three people, so far, none of them could match up to this President by in scheming. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Wang Ling's views were the same, and he quickly sent a message. Brother Ling, Brother Little Silver and I made a wasted trip last night. This person must have already caught wind of it, and it'll be even more difficult to catch him now. Although there was no clear evidence at the moment, Mr. Liu's testimony was basically credible. If this President Bai really was the mastermind behind the extermination of the holy beasts back then it was enough to show how meticulous this person's plan was. It could even be said that he had planned ahead. Wang Ling frowned and replied, "Do you have a problem with that?" To be honest, Wang Ling couldn't think of a better way to deal with this matter. The method that Mr. Liu had provided to find President Bai was probably the most direct way. Now that the plan had failed, he didn't think that President Bai would show up so easily. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded and replied, "Yes. I have two ways." It was clear that after coming back last night, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had pondered this for a long time. Although Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's realm wasn't high, he was smart and had the courage to court death. The key was that this great death-courting senior still had the soul suppression ring which Wang Ling had given him, so it could be said that he was even more fearless now when it came to courting death. Wang Ling waited for a few seconds, and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal swiftly replied with a complete plan. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's reply was as follows: "The first way is to find that mysterious informant in the forum. Based on what the informant knows about the Demon Hunters Association, I believe that this person definitely knows President Bai very well. But that person has hidden his location, and Little Black can't find him. If Brother Ling can ask Senior Wang Ming for help, he might be able to find a way. The second way is to sacrifice Brother Little Silver." According to Mr. Liu, the Wuji umbrella in President Bai's hands contains a total of 49 holy beast skins, but it's still missing one before it's completely finished. I've already confirmed this with Mr. Liu, and he can say with certainty that the last holy beast skin is that of the Silver Unicorn clan. When he saw the second plan, Wang Ling shook his head without hesitation and answered resolutely with two words: "No." Protect the last holy beast and hide Little Silver's identity at the same time. This was what Wang Ling had agreed to when he had brought Little Silver to live in the city. Chapter 529. Wang Ling's attitude was actually already very clear. This President Bai had to be caught. As the main culprit behind the extinction of the holy beasts back then, Wang Ling felt that his sins were already so grave that they could already be described as too numerous to count. However, tracking down and capturing President Bai had to be based on protecting Little Silver. This protection wasn't just for Little Silver's safety, but also for his personal information. Almost everyone now knew that the holy beasts were already extinct, and apart from those who had participated in the Immortal Mansion operation with him the last time, no one else knew Little Silver's true identity. Even the people in the group who had participated in the Immortal Mansion incident had all chosen to keep quiet after their return and hadn't leaked any information. Thus, Little Silver's identity was absolutely safe now. Wang Ling felt like throwing away a watermelon to pick up a sesame seed by revealing Little Silver's identity to lure out the master of Immortal Mansion. To be honest, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had completely expected this answer. He had actually guessed that Wang Ling would definitely answer like this. Ling Zhenren was a person who attached great importance to comradeship, and there were many times when people also habitually attributed this to fetters. Given Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's understanding of Wang Ling, when he had first thought of this plan, he had already felt that it wouldn't work. As for why had he deliberately brought it up when he knew it wouldn't work? Actually, it had been Little Silver's one-sided request. Little Silver had always been looking for an opportunity to show off to his master. While Wang Ling had texted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal in reply, Little Silver had been standing next to him, picking at his snow-white feet as he watched. The text was very concise and to the point, and could be said to have Ling Zhenren's unique style. Although it was a little short, Little Silver still felt deeply moved. I knew Master would definitely refuse. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was taken aback. If you knew, then why did you make me ask? This is a test. Little Silver said proudly as he crossed his arms and pulled out a stack of books from under his butt. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal glanced at the covers. These books were How to Make Your Master Love You More, 100 Ways to Capture a Man, and When a Masochist Meets a Sadist. The third book frightened Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Damn! Brother Little Silver, you have feelings for Brother Ling? No, I wouldn't dare. Little Silver pulled his neck back. The third book is a bonus. Don't be fooled by the book's title. It's all serious college courses. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, what specialized course? Look, this page is full of them. Little Silver opened the book and pointed at the table of contents. I happened to read the study of wax dropping in the last few days. The corner of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's mouth twitched. Sure enough. Was it because he didn't study enough? Or had he graduated from university too long ago? Come to think of it. He has a double doctorate. But what is this wax drop study? Why hadn't he heard of it before? It's written in great detail, and it even describes the founder of this profession. Founder. And the name is translated from English. I think he's a foreigner. The English translation of the name is Clay's Wax Dance. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal suddenly felt old. The online chat continued. In that case, we can only think of a way to find the informant. Also, we need to strengthen Mr. Liu's protection, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal quickly typed as he put forward his package plan. In addition to finding the informant, Mr. Liu's safety was now extremely important, because he was currently the only witness who could come forward to testify against President Bai in court. If something happened to Mr. Liu and President Bai wasn't caught, then there really would be no one to testify against him. Wang Ling texted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to send him the original link to the post, and he would try to ask Wang Ming to track down the informant. Little Black might be at his wit's end, but Wang Ming might have a way. At this point, there was no point in panicking, they could only wait for further information from Wang Ming on the search. Before closing the chat window, Wang Ling told Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal that Loopy Toad would come to his house later to look for Little Silver. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal immediately replied very politely, by the way, it seems that this is Brother Dog's first time at my house, right? Don't worry, Brother Ling. I'll let the security guard know later, and they'll send a car to take Brother Dog to my door. Wang Ling stared at the screen for a long time, deep in thought. As expected, the high-end villa district was different. There was actually a special car to pick up visitors. Yet another classic case of people being inferior to dogs. This was Loopy Toad's first time going to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's home. Little Silver had in fact invited Loopy Toad to be a guest several times before. This guy already completely regarded grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's house as its own home. Furthermore, from his online chats with Little Silver had actually discovered a lot of grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's little secrets by staying at home all day. Of course, Loopy Toad didn't know exactly what these secrets were, because Little Silver had used these little secrets to get grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to brush grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's hair in his beast form. Furthermore, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't just brush grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, but also give him hair conditioner. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had beautiful black hair to begin with, and he used about 2 bottles of hair conditioner at home every month, which was actually enough. Since Little Silver's arrival, hair conditioner had become another large daily expense for grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. The difference was that previously, they bought it by the bottle, but now they bought it by the box. But Loopy Toad usually didn't think that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had any complaints. It felt that grenade-throwing treated Little Silver like a younger brother. Although Little Silver was older than grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, in the end, his mental development wasn't as mature. After all, this great death-courting senior was already recognized as a veteran in the circle. For someone as inexperienced as Little Silver, it actually wasn't excessive at all for him to call him senior. To be honest, Loopy Toad had thought that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's life would be pretty tough, but now that it thought about it, it felt that this guy was enjoying it. It really wasn't easy to raise such a monster who stirred up trouble at his side. So online, Little Silver's nickname for Loopy Toad was Dog Boppy. In turn, Loopy Toad's nickname for Little Silver was Monster Silver. One silver and one dog, hurting and happy with each other. Chapter 530. The villa that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had bought in Wenxian Garden was in a high-end villa area, and the people who lived there were either rich or respectable. The villa that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal lived in was in a single-family villa area, and the house prices there were frighteningly high. The villa was divided into a connected area and a single-family area. The houses in the connected area were actually more affordable, but grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had initially preferred to live alone. But sometimes, after living alone for a long time, it was inevitable that he would feel a little lonely, so Little Silver's arrival could be considered a spice to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's life. About an hour after leaving the Wong family's small villa, a green figure appeared in the sunlight at the entrance of the Wenxian Garden Villa district. It was Loopy Toad's first time going to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's villa, but it had already gone out on its own several times, so it wasn't to the point of getting lost. In any case, even if Loopy Toad couldn't find its way around Songhai City, it just had to give Audiobook a call, and someone from a nearby branch could immediately take this Greenford forgiveness dog that had lost its master away. However, that was only when there was no other choice. Audiobook had actually been quite busy recently. It could be said that he was badly battered by the Demon Hunters Association. Apart from that, the big shots, who had been sent to Songhai First Prison, were still at the stage of having their evidence appraised, and the verdict hadn't been finalized yet. It would be at least half a year before they would be put on trial. But that didn't mean that Audiobook had been idle during this half a year. He had also been a participant in the previous major events, and not only had he been a participant, he had also been the overall commander of the operation, and had personally approved all aspects of the process. Signature, stamp, review, and approval. Every step was the same, and only after the end of the first step could they continue. It hadn't actually been long since Audiobook had been apprenticed, but it really hadn't been easy for him to bear so much pressure. He had planned to prepare a birthday present for Wang Ming on Army Day on August 1st, and had actually been thinking about preparing a gift for Audiobook as well, which could be considered his first greeting gift since becoming Audiobook's apprentice. But he hadn't thought about what to give her. Loopy Toad waited for a while on the opposite side of the road from the Wenxian Garden Villa complex. It had already sent Little Silver a text message to ask him to come out and pick it up, but 10 minutes had already passed and there was still no sign of Little Silver. Could it be that this fellow didn't see it? Forget it, the corner of Loopy Toad's eye twitched, and it planned to use the old way to choose an outer wall and climb over it. However, the defensive measures of Wenxian Garden's high-end villa district were too good. It jumped onto the outer wall and stood on top of it, patting it with its paw. It found that there was a layer of transparent enchantment, like a glass cover. When it patted, it would make a ping-ping-ping sound. This hardness, it wouldn't even be a problem for it to withstand the bombardment of a soul formation cultivator. As expected of a high-class villa district, even the protective measures were so airtight. Loopy Toad walked several dozen steps to the side and realized that the outer wall of the villa was shrouded in a barrier that not even a bird could fly through. So, the plan to invade the outer wall had failed. At that moment, Loopy Toad took out its phone and saw that Little Silver still hadn't replied. It instantly despaired. Now that it had no other choice, it could only try to walk through the main entrance. Sighing in its heart, Loopy Toad jumped off the outer wall and walked through the main entrance again. But just as it reached the entrance, it was startled to realize that the way the security guards at the entrance were looking at it wasn't quite right. "Is it, this dog?" It looks like it," the two security guards spoke in low voices, but Loopy Toad could hear them very clearly. In an instant, Loopy Toad's mind was filled with cases of pet hunters pretending to be adults in the news to capture spirit beasts. For example, there were pet hunters who would pretend to be security guards in residential areas and capture unsuspecting spirit beasts strolling in residential areas. Could this be the Demon Hunters Association's revenge? The moment it met the security guard's eyes, Loopy Toad was almost instantly on guard. It turned out that this group of people had already set up a trap here and had been waiting for it. Loopy Toad instantly thought of a countermeasure. It had to think of a way to escape first. Furthermore, there was no guarantee that this group of Demon Hunters Association wouldn't block its way, so running away was useless. It had to seek help from an acquaintance. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's home was in the villa, so Loopy Toad had to find him first. So at this thought, Loopy Toad exchanged looks with the security guards and immediately raised its paw to point at the sky. "Look! Mischievous blue moon." Maybe it was because these 4 words were too magical or too charming, but the security guards actually directly followed the dog's paw and turned around. Loopy Toad felt that it had tried this trick time and time again. It had used the same trick to deal with those Bone Dragon men from the Demon Hunters Association last time. The moment the security guards turned around, Loopy Toad tore off its lackeys and ran into the villa. When the security guards turned around, they suddenly thought of a few lines from a song. Looking forward to a stroke of luck and an impact. What a wonderful encounter. Over the top of the mountain and layers of white clouds. Where is the green light? But Face's speed was too fast. It directly turned into a green light in front of their eyes. The security captain was stunned, and then he hurriedly knocked on the heads of the 2 team members next to him. "What are you spacing out for? Why aren't you chasing after it? You must have scared it." Loopy Toad hadn't run more than a few steps when it realized that a group of security guards were chasing it on scooters. There were 5 of them. It was quite a big scene. Furthermore, there was actually a small sports car behind the 5 security guards. Loopy Toad was stupefied at this scene. In order to catch it, the Demon Hunters Association was going all out. But Loopy Toad actually thought that this group of people might not be from the Demon Hunters Association, and might just be pet hunters from another organization. At a time when the country was cracking down on the illegal trade of spirit beasts, how bold could this group of people be? In broad daylight, they were openly snatching a dog from a high-class villa area. Speaking of which, where were the villa's security guards? Were they so poorly managed? Didn't they know that their own security guards had been disguised? As Loopy Toad ran, it glanced at the people chasing it behind it. Logically speaking, when a pet hunter captured a spirit beast, the quieter the better. But this group of people was making such a ruckus that it was as if they were afraid people wouldn't know what they were doing. Loopy Toad felt that something wasn't right. As it ran, it realized that there seemed to be more and more people behind it. Not only were there people on scooters, there were also people who were directly chasing it on foot. Loopy Toad couldn't take it anymore. It stopped at the next intersection and turned around to ask, "Why are you chasing me?" The point was, it didn't have any syrup. Seeing that Loopy Toad had stopped, the dozens of security guards also stopped chasing it. The security guards roared in their hearts in unison, F***K. It's finally stopped. This dog can really F***King run. Panting heavily, a captain trotted over to Loopy Toad and saluted. "Mr. Dog, are you here to see Mr. Grenade Throwing?" Loopy Toad nodded weakly. Then, the captain opened the door of the sports car behind him. "Mr. Dog, get in. We're here to pick you up." Loopy Toad. Chapter 531. To be honest, this misunderstanding was actually a little big, but Loopy Toad felt that it couldn't be blamed. As soon as it entered the door, several people had already stared at it maliciously. Anyone in its shoes would have misunderstood it. And the most important thing was that it had run away, but this group of people were still relentlessly chasing it, so it would have been strange if it hadn't run away. At that moment, Loopy Toad suddenly thought of a foreign prank show in which 100 people would be arranged at a street corner, and when a passerby passed by on the road, they would directly rush out and chase the passerby. This was the embodiment of instant awareness. Although they didn't know exactly what had happened, the first thing anyone would think of was to protect themselves first. When the squad leader drove Loopy Toad to Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal's door, it was actually still feeling embarrassed. Who knew that its first visit to Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal would cause such a mishap? When they entered the door, Loopy Toad saw the squad leader pull Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal into a small corner and give him a report on what had just happened. "Mr. Grenade Throwing, your dog, oh, it's not mine, it's my brother's dog. You're my guest today." "So it's like that," the squad leader rubbed his head. "Mr. Grenade Throwing, I think there's something wrong with your brother's dog's mental state. We wanted to say hello just now, but it seemed to be frightened. We chased it for a long time before we brought it here." Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal broke out in a sweat. Actually, he felt that he had been careless in this matter, since the recent turmoil at the Demon Hunters Association hadn't subsided. Although Brother Dog looked indifferent on the surface, it was highly vigilant when it was outside. Any unfamiliar gaze could make it suspicious. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have had the security guards make such a big fuss, and would have directly told them to let him in. "Thank you for your hard work." Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal took out a pack of Immortal Spirit cigarettes very politely. "Give some to the brothers later." These cigarettes were quite expensive, and most people couldn't smoke them. However, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal didn't have the habit of smoking. The cigarettes at home were given to him by corporate partners on the forum during the holidays, and there were still a lot of them piled up at home. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal wasn't in a hurry to deal with them, and simply put them all at home to use as gifts. The captain didn't stand on ceremony. He immediately put on a smile and accepted the cigarette. "Thank you, Mr. Grenade Throwing." This was actually very common in high-end villa areas. Although this cigarette was very expensive, it was only a tip of 10 to 20 yuan for the nouveau riche in the villa area. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal waved his hand. It's fine. If my friend's green-furred dog comes again, just directly open the gate and let it in. It will find me on its own." "All right, Mr. Grenade Throwing." The squad leader nodded. Suddenly, he thought of something and said, "Oh, that's right, Mr. Grenade Throwing. Our villa area has a pet center that provides free medical assistance and psychological counseling services for the pets of the villa owners. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal nodded. Of course he knew about the pet center. But he couldn't just say that his brother's dog had a mental problem. Thus, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal simply said, "You don't have to worry too much about that. Have you heard about the Demon Hunters Association recently? That's why my brother's dog is more vigilant. It'll be fine in a few days." I see. The squad leader suddenly understood and then sighed. But Mr. Grenade Throwing, I personally suggest that you do some psychological counseling as soon as possible. Sometimes, being too tense isn't a good thing. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal already didn't want to argue with this squad leader anymore, because he knew that the pet center in the villa area was currently holding an event. It was true that the owner's pet medical treatment and counseling were free, but some of the special services inside weren't free. Things like hair care, hair dye, and perm. Based on Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal's personal experience, he felt that if he continued to talk with this squad leader, the topic would eventually shift to applying for a membership card. Thus, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal could only politely refuse. "I still have to entertain it. Squad leader, please go ahead. Also, the pet center may not be able to help brother dog's mental condition." The squad leader, why? Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal casually made up an excuse. It was bitten by a dog before. He said it very seriously, and when he said it, he almost believed it himself. The squad leader, when he came back to his senses, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal was already gone. When Loopy Toad entered, it noticed a hole on the first floor. This was the hole that Little Silver had punched out the last time Wong Ling had come. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal hadn't patched it up, and had simply left it there. Then, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal had smoothed out the edges of the hole a little so that it would at least look better. Loopy Toad poked its head into the hole and happened to see Little Silver sitting cross-legged on the broccoli sofa in the basement, meditating. No wonder he hadn't seen the text message just now. On the coffee table in front of the sofa was a crispy noodle snack bag which Little Master Ling had enchanted. Loopy Toad had just jumped into the hole when Little Silver let out a long breath and muttered, cultivation complete. So fast. Loopy Toad was stunned. Little Silver laughed. Master's crispy noodle snacks are really useful. I feel like my spirit energy has improved a lot again. Saying this, Little Silver shook the crispy noodle snack bag on the table, which was already tied up with a rubber band. I wanted to cultivate today, but when I heard you were coming, I took a small bite. I never thought that it would take me so long to digest Master's crispy noodle snacks. Little Silver licked his hands clean and licked the powder off his fingers. The corner of Loopy Toad's eye twitched. Why didn't you finish it in one go? Little Silver shook his head. In one go? How could I? I still have to catch up on TV shows tonight. Loopy Toad almost spat blood when it heard this. This was already developing into a nerd. Little Silver counted on his fingers. Think about it, I have to make time to eat every day. I have to make time to catch up on TV shows, I have to make time to read comics, and I have to make time to figure out how to make Master like me even more. Finally, I have to make time for Grenade Throwing to brush my fur, and now I have to make time to digest Master's crispy noodle snack to speed up my cultivation. There really isn't enough time. Loopy Toad, how much does it cost you? Little Silver waved his hand. Not expensive, just a few million. Speaking up to this point, Little Silver cast a glance at Loopy Toad. By the way, when can I move in with Master? Together. Don't even think about it. Chapter 532. Little Silver didn't believe Loopy Toad's words at all, and his first reaction was that this dog too was probably lying to him again. Given Master's level, he had too many ways to make money. How could he be poor? In fact, Little Silver had always thought that the income of modern human cultivators was based on their realms, and that the higher their realms, the more they would earn. For someone like Grenade Throwing, who hadn't reached Itinerant Immortal Realm, he was already making a lot of money. He didn't even blink when he spent several million a month. How could Master be weaker than Grenade Throwing? Seeing Little Silver's skeptical expression, the corners of Loopy Toad's eyes couldn't help twitching. It knew this guy wouldn't believe it. The truth was that little Masterling was very stingy and thrifty. He never spent money extravagantly, and every penny was carefully calculated. All of this was based on the values and consumption values that Father Wong and Mother Wong had instilled in Wong Ling since he was a child. Boys should be raised in poverty. This was the view on money that Father and Mother Wong had instilled in Wong Ling from a young age. Although Father Wong's income was very high, he still limited Wong Ling's monthly allowance to let him know that it wasn't easy to make money. This was a feeling that most people wouldn't experience before they started working. Wong Ling's age in particular might not be as rich as Lotus Sun's family, but at the very least, they didn't have to worry about food or clothing, and didn't have to worry about working or earning money until they started their internship in university. These problems were too far away for most children, but time passed by very quickly. As parents, Father and Mother Wong couldn't help Wong Ling control his primordial chi, but at the very least, they had done a lot of work for him as he grew up. When a person had absolute power, it was too easy for their mentality to change. Father Wong was still writing books now, and had read a lot of similar stories. Mother Wong had also been a writer before, so her imagination was very strong. In the past, the couple had always fantasized about what they would do if Wong Ling turned into a Chinibu devil. When Wong Ling was very young, Father and Mother Wong even dreamed several times of him floating in the air and yelling at the dense crowd of human cultivators watching him from below, a bunch of ants. Why should I, Wong Ling, explain what I do to you? These were all stories that Mother Wong shared with Richard when she went grocery shopping and took it out for a walk. Every time it thought of this, Loopy Toad's green dog fur couldn't help shaking. But it also couldn't expose its little Masterling's shortcomings in front of Little Silver. There was a very important condition in the Spirit Beast contract. No matter what the situation was, the Spirit Beast could not undermine its master. There were some things that could be seen through but not spoken out. But Face understood this point very well. Little Silver didn't believe it now, but he would definitely understand later on. Sighing in its heart, Loopy Toad used the swallowing spell to spit out the Spirit Beast contract which its little master had given it previously. This one was for Little Silver. Wow! Master wants to sign a contract with me. The moment Little Silver saw the contract, he was so excited that he almost jumped up from the sofa. He picked Loopy Toad up from the ground and rubbed the dog's head wildly as he shouted, "You dog skimmer! I didn't expect you to be so reliable this time." Loopy Toad narrowed its eyes helplessly. "Be gentler. I've been losing a lot of hair recently. If you keep rubbing me, I'll go bald." "Little Silver, it's fine, it's fine. If I go bald, we'll learn from Lord Island and open a live stream room. We'll form a team and call ourselves to Silver." Loopy Toad, Little Silver let go of Loopy Toad and put it down. "By the way, how should I sign this?" Loopy Toad shook its dog fur as it suddenly remembered that this was Little Silver's first time signing a contract and he didn't know the process. In fact, it was also Loopy Toad's first time. It had been a proper Demon King before. When had it ever signed a Spirit Beast contract with anyone? Little Silver was naturally the same. He was a holy beast, and very likely the last holy beast in the world today. His status was even more distinguished. But there were some things that were unfamiliar the first time, but familiar the second time. On the side, Loopy Toad said, "There are 2 copies. You just need to put a blood stamp on the contract." "Oh. That's easy. Little Silver directly bit his thumb and very skillfully pressed his thumb's blood stamp on the 2 contracts. The contracts instantly took effect, and in front of Little Silver's eyes, the 2 contracts turned into specks of golden dust and disappeared. When Little Silver came back to his senses, the contents of the contract had already appeared in his mind. Every word was like a soul brand, appearing vividly in his mind. Little Silver's movements were so fast that Loopy Toad was dazed. "You're going to put your thumb on it just like that? Don't you want to look at the contents of the contract?" Little Silver waved his hand. "What's there to look at about a big thigh contract, Loopy Toad? Big thigh contract?" Little Silver looked at Loopy Toad in amazement. "Didn't you sign the contract to hug his thigh?" Loopy Toad was silent. It actually had nothing to say in response. Little Silver closed his eyes and sensed the connection between Master and him that had formed in the depths of his soul after signing the contract. It was as if they were connected by a thread of nothingness. He had lived for 8,000 years, and since the extinction of the holy beast race, he had spent almost every day and night in fear. But this contract gave Little Silver a sense of fulfillment and security that came from the bottom of his heart. Little Silver tskeed. Signing a contract feels so magical. Even if Master isn't by my side, it feels like I'm sleeping with him. Loopy Toad, this was the first time it had heard this description. But the truth was that the words were crude. "Loopy Toad, in the future, if there's any danger you can't resolve, you can directly use the power of the contract to summon Little Master Ling, you know?" "Of course I know. The moment the contract was formed, I knew what to do." Little Silver put his hands on his hips and smiled mysteriously. He. I feel like no matter how I court death in the future, I won't have to be afraid." "Loopy Toad, it's better if you don't. After all, not every great death-courting senior was called Grenade-Throwing Senior Immortal." After chatting with Little Silver in the basement for a while, Grenade-Throwing Senior Immortal's voice came from the first floor. "Brother Dog, why don't you stay for lunch?" "All right," Loopy Toad replied. In fact, Loopy Toad could also think of what to eat. First of all, this lunch would definitely include Grenade-Throwing Senior Immortal's favorite broccoli, and secondly, it would be takeout for Little Silver. Sure enough, Grenade-Throwing Senior Immortal replied very quickly, "I just picked broccoli here. If Brother Dog doesn't want to eat it, you can have takeout with Brother Little Silver. There's no dog food at home, Brother Dog is very particular." It's fine, Senior Immortal is too polite," said Loopy Toad. Then, it turned to Little Silver. "What do you usually eat for takeout?" Little Silver spread his hands and answered matter-of-factly, "The restaurants nearby. I ordered all of them, and they actually tasted pretty good." About half an hour later, a truck drove into the Wenxian Garden Villa estate. This whole truck. Chapter 533. This wasn't the first time this truck carrying Little Silver's orders had come, and the security guards at the entrance of Wenxian Garden were very familiar with it. When they saw the license plate this time, they straightaway let the truck through. Of course, this truck wasn't a delivery service, but a third-party delivery person whom Grenade-Throwing Senior Immortal had specially hired. After Little Silver's orders were placed, the delivery person would drive the truck to pick up the food. The route was directly designed like the bus route, and the container on the truck had been specially modified so that there was no need to worry about the food getting cold at all. It would be delivered at the same temperature as it was received. When Loopy Toad followed Little Silver out to collect the orders, it saw an unprecedented spectacular scene. After the delivery truck stopped, the little brother in the driver's seat immediately ran to the back to open the container. Another little brother was sitting in the container, and the two of them helped to unload the goods. There were 10 boxes in total, and they were all filled with Little Silver's orders. Loopy Toad's eyes twitched at this scene. "How much did you order?" Little Silver shook his head. Not much. I've been on a diet recently, so I eat less." This is half my usual amount. Loopy Toad sucked in a cold breath. In the past, it could actually eat this as well. But its current body wasn't enough to support its appetite, so at this stage, Loopy Toad was still relatively frugal. It was said that after a spirit beast gained the power to take human form, its appetite would greatly increase. To be honest, Loopy Toad was actually a little worried. It was quite frugal now, but what would it do if little Masterling couldn't afford to feed it in the future? The movements of the two delivery men were very skilled. The goods that were unloaded from the car were handled with care. Each box was also written with the brand name of the third-party delivery company, No Soup Spills, which meant that during the delivery process, not a drop of soup would be spilled. If it spilled, they would have to pay 10 times the amount. Thus, the entire company's slogan was 4 words: no soup spilled, you'll be compensated. Since these two little brothers had been in charge of delivering Little Silver's food this month, they were very familiar with him. After the goods were unloaded, one of the little brothers smiled and started to check the list with Little Silver. "Hello, Mr. Silver, thank you for using the No Soup Spilled delivery service. Now, let's check your order. 100 portions of spirit feather braised chicken rice, 200 portions of soup dumplings, 1,000 portions of octopus balls, 100 portions of hot and sour noodles, 500 portions of top-grade duck soup, 100 kilograms of devil fruit, 1 ton of Sea King seafood." The hot food is packed in layers, and each box has been expanded. After Mr. Silver is done eating, you can leave the box and trash at the door, and we'll send someone to pick it up. Thanks. Little Silver smiled faintly. See you tomorrow. The two young men bowed, then got into the truck and drove away. With a wave of his hand, Little Silver put the 10 boxes away in his storage space. Based on Little Silver's way of eating, he would choose to eat them one by one. In any case, these things wouldn't go cold in the boxes. Little brother. Little spirit looped little ling loopy loopy looped little brother. You eat for me, filling my stomach is the most important thing. Nutrition doesn't matter at all. Little Silver sighed. Apart from Master's crispy noodle snacks, other tonics have little effect on me. I get hungry easily after eating them, so I might as well not eat them at all. Loopy Toad couldn't refute this. After all, Little Silver was a holy beast. The holy beast heart and blood in a holy beast's body were natural miraculous self-healing medicines that could help a holy beast recover faster from serious injuries. However, it was also because of their blood that holy beasts were very resistant to medicine. In the past, those unparalleled holy medicines that could make holy beasts enter a state of abundant spirit energy had gone extinct one after another after the extinction of holy beasts. Hence, Little Silver had long since given up all hope on the market for these so-called holy medicines that could replenish spirit energy. These holy medicines were useful for human cultivators, but had limited effect on holy beasts. Eating them couldn't increase their strength, and they couldn't fill their stomachs, so they might as well order takeout. But seeing that Little Silver had ordered so much takeout, and this was only half the usual amount, Loopy Toad was extremely alarmed. I thought holy beasts didn't have a desire for good food. What do you mean a desire for good food? Little Silver seemed to have a problem with this term. Only when you're full will you have the strength to cultivate. Those old cultivators in those health shows on TV talk about fasting, that's all nonsense. Loopy Toad, Little Silver might have ordered a lot, but he also ate very quickly. Loopy Toad was actually quite afraid of this. After all, its current body was that of a dead Akita, and Akitas weren't spirit beasts to begin with. Why could it cultivate? This was entirely because it had originally been a Demon King's soul. Furthermore, Little Masterling had actually helped it improve the Demon King Heart Sutra to a large extent for it to be able to cultivate to second class and transform its ordinary dog body into a spirit dog's body. However, even if it now had a spirit dog body, there were still all kinds of risks if it didn't take good care of itself. Little Silver ate very quickly. He opened the 10 boxes and gave Loopy Toad some food from each box before he started his gluttonous mode. In just half an hour, half of the boxes had already been emptied. Eating so fast isn't good for digestion. Also, it's easy to lose shape if you eat so fast. Loopy Toad poked a small octopus ball with its paw and chewed it slowly. Little Silver swallowed the thing in his mouth and wiped his mouth with a wet wipe. It's fine, I won't get fat. Loopy Toad. This was so annoying. Little Silver had ordered a lot of things for lunch, but it only took him an hour to finish them all. After eating, Little Silver leaned back on the broccoli sofa and picked his teeth lazily. Loopy Toad glanced at this guy's belly, which was still as flat as before, as if he hadn't eaten. It couldn't help sighing with emotion in its heart. What was a holy beast's stomach made of? Loopy Toad, why do I feel like you haven't eaten anything? Little Silver nodded slightly. Like I said, I only ordered half of the things today, and I even gave you some. I'm just barely half full. Loopy Toad. What if *** king half full? After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Little Silver finally thought of something serious. By the way, why did you come looking for me today? Dog 2 opened its mouth and spat out the bone king that Wei Ji had given it. Wei Ji had won this bone from the vice president of the Pet Trainers Guild, Crying Old Immortal. When Wei Ji had given it to Loopy Toad had smelled the blood of a holy beast on it. Loopy Toad had come today to ask Little Silver to help appraise this bone's origin. The moment Little Silver saw the bone, he couldn't help swallowing. It looks delicious, are you going to make soup out of it? Chapter 534. Because he had just finished eating and was still half full, all Little Silver could think about was food, losing weight and whatnot. Sure enough, it was the most painful. Thinking that his next meal would have to wait until noon the next day, Little Silver suddenly felt that it would take a long time. Furthermore, the nearby takeout shops actually only had this kind of stuff, and Little Silver felt like he was about to get sick of it. He had to think of a way to open some new shops. So when he saw Loopy Toad take out a white, flawless bone, Little Silver subconsciously licked his lips. For some reason, he felt that this bone was very delicious. What a pity. Little Silver stared at the bone under Loopy Toad's paw and shook his head from a distance. Loopy Toad, what a pity. Little Silver, it's a pity that it's a broken bone. The joint was caved in by a huge force, and some of the marrow inside leaked out. Otherwise, I could stew it and stick a straw in it to suck out the marrow. Wouldn't that be delicious? When he saw that it was a broken bone, Little Silver's interest instantly drained away. Loopy Toad couldn't stand this guy anymore, and simply pushed the bone over to Little Silver's feet. Smell it carefully. It's just a broken bone, what's there? Although he said that, Little Silver still sniffed at Loopy Toad's instructions. But before Little Silver's nose could get close, his pupils suddenly contracted and his expression turned serious. Holy beast blood. Where did you get this? Loopy Toad instantly felt a lot more at ease when it saw Little Silver's reaction. At the very least, it didn't smell wrong, and this bone was indeed the bone of a holy beast. For one thing, Little Silver himself was a holy beast, so his reaction to holy beast blood was more intense than Loopy Toad's. After all, Loopy Toad had to stick close to the bone to be able to smell the slightest hint of a scent, but Little Silver could smell it with just a light sniff. Of course, if it was too far away, Loopy Toad wouldn't be able to smell it. This was because the bone had been cleaned, and it actually had the smell of Crying Old Immortal's Fenrir's saliva. A friend gave it to me, surnamed Wei. He's a pet trainer, Loopy Toad answered truthfully. Oh, it's him. Little Silver remembered that Grenade Throwing had mentioned this person to him before. Furthermore, grenade throwing had actually been playing PUBG with Dog 2 yesterday. Why did he give you this? Where did you get it? Loopy Toad, actually, this bone isn't his. The vice president of the Pet Trainers Guild lost it to him, and the two of them made a bet. Then, the vice president lost, and the bone fell into his hands. This bone has a name, it's called Bone King. It was picked up by the vice president when he was out traveling. Little Silver, I see. After saying that, Loopy Toad stared at Little Silver. Can you tell where this bone came from? A moment later, he stretched out his finger and knocked on the bone, producing two crisp banging sounds. This sound was different from the sound of ordinary bones being knocked. It was actually a little pleasing to the ear. Cupping his chin, Little Silver stared at the bone and said in a low voice, judging from the color and hardness of this bone alone, it should belong to a land animal of the holy beast race. Furthermore, I'm 100% certain that this race is more afraid of water. If it's a race that comes in contact with water all year round, the sound of bones wouldn't be so crisp. It's obvious that this race likes to bask in the sun. So according to this condition, we can already eliminate many races. Loopy Toad hadn't expected Little Silver to actually have some skill. This had indeed already eliminated a lot of holy beast races. Like to live on land, fear water, love to bask in the sun. While Little Silver was thinking, Loopy Toad was also thinking in its heart. Although it had some guesses, it didn't directly say them out loud. It was afraid that doing so would interrupt Little Silver's train of thought. After a few minutes or so, Little Silver frowned and his eyes glowed with golden light. This was a holy beast's holy eye, which was different from an ordinary cultivator's heavenly eye and immortal Genuine's immortal eye, and was unique to holy beasts. An ordinary cultivator's heavenly eye was used to separate the false from the true, and could detect all kinds of illusions. The heavenly eye's strength would gradually increase as its realm increased. Above the heavenly eye, the eye that cultivators of the present world could reach by relying on their cultivation was the evolved, immortal eye. The strength of the immortal eye lay not only in its ability to separate the false from the true and detect illusions, but also in its ability to control the overall situation. It could also be used to set up illusions and even manipulate meteorites. This was the power of a true immortal. Apart from this, there were also a lot of other eyes in the cultivation world. For example, Evil Sword God's Purple Investigative Demon Eye was one of them. Other eye techniques had different effects, and other eyes could only be created among cultivators. For example, the Purple Investigative Demon Eye had the ability to see the end of the world, which could tear through space and penetrate tens of thousands of li, allowing the wielder of the demon eye to travel freely. However, the vast majority of other eye users would become sacrificial victims. In the past, there had been too many cases of other eye users being targeted by almighties and having their eyes forcibly plucked out. Little Silver's holy beast holy eye was different from the three kinds of human cultivator eyes mentioned above, and couldn't be inherited by cultivators. But it had a very resounding nickname, War Puppet. Because the holy eye's greatest use was its ability to see through all kinds of flaws. In fact, Wang Ling's eyes were also quite special. Although he usually liked to call them heavenly eyes, they were even more terrifying than immortal eyes. Every time Wang Ling opened his heavenly eye, his pupils would turn into three-petaled golden flowers. Loopy Toad had actually seen this scene countless times before. So how was this a heavenly eye? This was the king's eye. It contained the abilities of all of these eyes. The golden light emitted by Little Silver's holy eye shone on the Bone King for a short while before he turned off the holy eye's power. How is it? Loopy Toad asked. Little Silver nodded. I used the holy eye to check the bone density of this bone just now, and it's extremely high. But that's in comparison to a spirit beast. From a holy beast's point of view, the owner of this bone has a little metabolic osteogenesis syndrome. Loopy Toad, can you speak like a human? Little Silver, as the saying goes, osteoporosis. Loopy Toad, so, can you tell whose bone it is? Not yet. Little Silver shook his head. The most I can tell right now is that you've probably picked up a treasure. Loopy Toad. Little Silver, this kind of bone of a holy beast with slight osteoporosis is definitely the bone of a beast king. This bone must have come from a beast king's sacred beast. Loopy Toad, what the hell? I probably need to do more research on whose bone it is. It just so happens that this bone is broken, so I can extract its composition for comparison. Speaking up to this point, Little Silver couldn't help picking up the bone. This time, Little Silver brought the bone up to his nose and sniffed it carefully. He then returned the bone to Loopy Toad. Okay, take this bone back. I already know whose bone it is. Loopy Toad was confused. Little Silver, when I sniffed it just now, I realized that it doesn't just have the smell of holy beast blood on it, it also smells like spicy hot pot. So this bone definitely belongs to Dog Saint. Chapter 535. Little Silver's expression was very serious when he said this, and Loopy Toad realized that he definitely wasn't joking. Furthermore, putting together all these characteristics, it seemed that the owner of this Bone King had already completely overlapped with Dog Saint. Actually, it made sense why crying old immortal's Fenrir liked this bone so much. Fenrir was a western devil beast, but in the end, it was still a dog. Furthermore, this bone belonged to Dog Saint, so there was no reason for it not to be excited. Thus, Loopy Toad didn't doubt Little Silver's words at all. After all, when Dog Saint had been eaten, Little Silver had been hiding in the sacred dog clan's depository of Buddhist texts. As he watched Dog Saint being turned into a spicy hot pot, he had strongly condemned and protested in his heart on behalf of all dog lovers as he drooled. Ever since the massacre of the holy beasts, the news of the holy beasts had been cut off a long time ago. Over the years, many cultivators who were traveling outside had picked up a lot of broken bones that were suspected to belong to the holy beasts, but these broken bones had been collected and sealed in the museum. As for why such a large Bone King had slipped through the net, Loopy Toad thought that it probably had to do with all kinds of coincidences. Loopy Toad guessed that first, the smell of the spicy hot pot on the Bone King had masked some of the smell of holy beast blood, so when crying old immortal had discovered it, he hadn't realized that it was a holy beast bone, and had instead washed the entire bone to get rid of the smell of the hot pot. After that, crying old immortal had brought the Bone King home. This bone had been occupied by that Fenrir for a long time, and it had also been stained with Fenrir's smell, causing the Bone King to be accidentally hidden. If Weiji hadn't given it to Loopy Toad, this bone of Dog Saint might have been completely buried in the world. At that moment, Loopy Toad stared at the bone, lost in deep thought. Could it be that all of this had been predestined? Little Silver and Dog Too faced each other and stared at the pure white Bone King for a long time without saying anything. Loopy Toad felt a little heavy in this atmosphere. No wonder there hadn't been any news of holy beasts for so long. Now that they had finally found the major suspect in the holy beast massacre back then, this President Bai was too cunning, and so far, they still hadn't been able to find him. Loopy Toad thought that Little Silver must be in a lot of pain right now. Although there were many kinds of holy beasts, the Sacred Hound clan actually had a pretty good relationship with the Silverhorn Beast clan. Otherwise, Little Silver wouldn't have appeared in the Sacred Hound clan's depository of Buddhist texts to read. Thus, when Dog Too saw Little Silver staring at the bone with a despondent look on his face, he couldn't help but stretch out a paw and pat Little Silver's shoulder. The dead are gone, my condolences. It didn't know how to comfort Little Silver. After all, he was just a forgiveness dog, not a comfort dog. You don't need to comfort me. I'm not that sad, it's already in the past. Little Silver crossed his arms and said, my biggest wish now is to cultivate by Master's side. The second is to hurry up and catch that rumor-mongering President Bai, so that we can give our holy beast clan an explanation. Loopy Toad felt that Little Silver's words were actually quite ambitious. But why do I feel like you're very sad? Little Silver stared at Dog Bones and pursed his lips. How am I sad? I was just thinking about a very profound question. Loopy Toad, what question? Little Silver, I was thinking, when that group of people turned Dog Saint into a spicy hot pot back then, what kind of seasoning did they use? Why hasn't the spicy smell dissipated after so long? Loopy Toad. In the evening, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal warmly invited Loopy Toad to dinner again. Because he had been on a diet recently, Little Silver directly chose not to eat. Logically speaking, Loopy Toad felt that this guy was really quite hateful. He clearly had a constitution that wouldn't put on weight, but he still kept saying that he wanted to lose weight. What were those fatties to do? Didn't they want to lose face? At dinner time, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was busy in the kitchen. Loopy Toad really hadn't realized before that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could actually cook for himself. There was no one else with this wife-like attribute. Little Silver leaned back on the sofa on one side and fiddled with his phone. Loopy Toad couldn't help turning its head to ask, "How's Senior Immortal's cooking?" Little Silver hummed. "Not bad, and very healthy. You'll know when you eat it." Speaking up to this point, Little Silver suddenly smelled something. "I haven't asked you yet, what are you going to do with Dog Saint's bone? This thing actually doesn't have much of a tonic effect, whether it's for human cultivators or holy spirit beasts. But I don't know if it has any effect on dogs." "What do you suggest?" asked Loopy Toad. "My suggestion," Little Silver said, "I suggest that you use this bone as raw material and find a good weaponsmith to make a satisfactory magic weapon. Furthermore, Dog Saint's bone is representative. I believe it won't be too bad if it's made into a magic weapon. At the very least, this magic weapon will have a certain deterrent effect on all dog spirit beasts." "All right." Loopy Toad nodded. Little Silver's suggestion was quite constructive. Furthermore, it was currently indeed short of a magic weapon. The Toad clan's ultimate treasure was the primordial oil bead, which was a first-class holy weapon that could only be used by successive clan leaders. Ever since Loopy Toad had become a dog, its connection with this magic treasure had been severed. But given its current body, the primordial oil bead actually wasn't very suitable for it. There might be battles big and small in the future, and it needed a magic treasure to defend itself. In the end, it would have to ask Little Master for help, but Loopy Toad felt that this matter would probably be handed over to Fatty Luo in the end. Because next week was the busiest week. Although there weren't many midterm exams left, they still had to participate in the district sports meet. In addition to the relay race, at Teacher Ye's strong request, Wang Ling had also applied for the Medicine Ball and the Battle of Soul Pets events. All in all, next week was going to be very busy. And most importantly, it didn't have much time left after its last prophetic dream. Loopy Toad made some rough calculations. It just so happened that next week was the day it would return to the clan. It could be said that everything was piling up together. Loopy Toad also had a vague feeling that it was a pain in the ass. "Let's eat." At that moment, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal came out of the kitchen with a tray in each hand. This was the healthy feast that Little Silver had talked about tonight: broccoli egg drop soup, stir-fried broccoli, wine broccoli, broccoli tempura, chicken stew with broccoli. There was actually one more dish, which was diced broccoli. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had chopped it up and made it into broccoli soup. Loopy Toad was stupefied as it stared at the soup. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, this is Romance of the Western Wing. Chapter 536. Loopy Toad had seen the information on the Battle of Spirit Beasts this time. Furthermore, Loopy Toad's aptitude at the Spirit Beast Assessment Center had been appraised as third class, and little Master Ling wholeheartedly wanted it to participate in actual combat between spirit beasts, since it could better hone the rapport between its soul and body through actual combat. From the information on the previous competition, Loopy Toad had been at peak third class at that time, and its biggest opponent among all the spirit beasts participating in the competition was a land shark called Aluminum Small Fish. This was a spirit beast that the Aluminum Tree of the three Tree Brothers from Reliance High School had sent out to participate in the battle. It was at peak third class and was very aggressive. Furthermore, it was amphibious and could fight in a variety of environments. Loopy Toad had been wondering how it should attack in a situation where the other party had an advantageous terrain. But now, this concern was completely dispelled. Because who knew that a week later, after soaking in Little Silver's holy beast blood, it would suddenly advance to second class, refining the Bone King into a magic weapon still had to be considered at length. After all, the raw material was the bone of a holy beast, and a beast king at that, so refining it wouldn't be easy. Little Master's great weapon refining spell was certainly convenient, but Loopy Toad actually couldn't handle an offensive magic weapon that was too powerful. In this case, it usually required a custom-made player like Fatty Luo to step in. It was July 17th on Monday in the 13th week of the semester. Because the midterm exams were coming up soon, Teacher Pan was always the first to arrive at school these days, and then stood guard in front of the dais like a great Buddha. According to Dopeygua's description, it was as if Teacher Pan's butt had been nailed to the chair, except for her hands and eyes. It was as if all her other organs had been petrified. With old Pan standing guard in class, no one dared to move at all, and there wasn't even a sound to speak. This actually gave Wang Ling some peace. In the past, the class would always be stirred up by the two masters of rhythm, Dopey-gua and Super Chin. Now, everyone was quiet, which was simply wonderful. But in fact, this silence was only on the surface, because Wang Ling saw that Dopey-gua and Super Chin were chatting on their phones. Super Chin just hid his phone under a book and pretended to flip through it as he typed. Dopey-gua was even more ruthless. He bought a very thick cultivation dictionary, dug a hole in the middle of the dictionary that was just big enough to fit a cell phone, and directly embedded the cell phone inside. Wang Ling, when he was at school, his wristwatch was always turned off, and he basically didn't check it. Super Chen and Dopey-gua were chatting happily in the private chat window, and Wang Ling didn't join in. In any case, Dopey-gua was right next to him, and he could see out of the corner of his eye what they were talking about. This was a group chat that Dopey-gua had created. Wang Ling looked at the number of people online. There were actually quite a few of them. Super Chin, what about Wang Ling? Did you pull him in? Dopey-gua, he is reciting English beside me. He probably won't look at the group chat, but he might be spying in the dark. Wang Ling, Super Chin sighed. What about Lotus Sun? Aren't you going to pull Lotus Sun in? Dopey-gua shook his head. This is our men's group. I won't add you. At that moment, Little Peanut sent a message. Both of you better stop. I think old Pan might have noticed just now. You two are on your own, Super Chin said. Peanut, you're too timid. With the book in the way, it's fine. As soon as old Pan steps off the dais, I'll immediately put my phone away. The whole thing took less than 2 seconds. I specially trained it at home. Little Peanut, Dopey-gua, saying this, Super Chin couldn't help asking, what about you guys? Where do you hide your phones? Dopey-gua, hee, this master's phone is flawless. I dug a hole in the dictionary, and embedded it in the dictionary. Super Chin couldn't help sending a thumbs up. Damn, awesome, big bro. Dopey-gua, I wonder where Lotus Sun puts her phone when she's playing with it. At that moment, Little Peanut couldn't help saying, his dad is a school board member. Old Pan won't care, Super Chin and Dopey-gua, society, Society. Little Peanut, do you know that the essay Lotus Sun wrote for her senior high school entrance exam is still in the exhibition hall of selected essays? The title is My Dad, CEO of Wagwa Water Curtain Group, one of the top 100 companies in the world. Super Chin and Dopigwa, we can't afford to offend her. Unlike Super Chin and Dopigwa, Little Peanut stealthily took out his phone from under the table to look at it. Because he was the commissary in charge of studies and was sitting in the first row, Teacher Pan wouldn't look in his direction. But under normal circumstances, Little Peanut wouldn't take the initiative to play with his phone. As the commissary in charge of studies, he had to set an example. As for why he had popped up in the group chat today, it was purely because he felt that something wasn't right about Old Pan's aura, and wanted Dopigwa and Super Chin to put their phones away quickly. Little Peanut, both of you can stop. Old Pan really noticed it. I'm done, I'm turning off my phone. I'm scared. After saying this, he saw that the number of people online in the group chat had dropped by 1. Little Peanut really had turned off his phone. Super Chin snickered. Su Shao, this coward, Dopigwa, hee, did he forget to add a JPEG to his scared? Just as the two of them finished typing, a murderous aura suddenly rose in the class. BZZT. In a split second, everyone felt cold sweat trickle down their backs. For a moment, Super Chin and Dopigwa were stupefied and completely forgot to put their phones away. It could only be said that Teacher Pan was in the end Teacher Pan won. As a pioneer teacher at number 60 high school, Teacher Pan's movements were really too fast. From the eruption of her aura to getting up, and then to pulling down all the curtains in the classroom. In the end, she turned off the lights in the classroom. Her entire movement was as smooth as flowing water, and actually took less than half a second. Why was Old Pan so familiar with it? It was very obvious that she was already a veteran of 100 battles. Teacher Pan had used this trick more than once on the students of previous cohorts, and it had worked every time. Furthermore, she had become increasingly proficient at it. The moment Teacher Pan turned off the lights, all the lights in the classroom instantly went out, forming a sharp contrast with the light on Dopigwa's and Super Chen's phone screens. The screens weren't very bright, but the contrast was still very obvious on their faces. Right after that, Teacher Pan swept her gaze over everyone in the class. Now, those whose faces are glowing, come to my office. Don't tell me you've got water light needles on your faces. Chapter 537. Almost every teacher in charge couldn't escape the fate of being slandered and ridiculed by their students. Old Pan, who had been teaching at number 60 high for many years, was certainly no exception. In terms of teaching ability, there were actually many teachers who were better than Old Pan, but as a teacher in charge, teaching ability actually didn't mean everything. Why had Old Pan been named number 60 high's gold medal teacher and teaching pioneer? Headmaster Chen wasn't a fool, because he knew that as a teacher in charge, teaching ability alone was useless. High school was a period of confusion and chuyuni. Many students would liberate their natural instincts at this stage, or in layman's terms, they would be rebellious. If they didn't receive the right spiritual guidance at this stage, it would in fact have a huge impact on their lives later on. What rebellious children needed was care as well as proper guidance on the three views, which was what Headmaster Chen emphasized at the school assembly every year. So while teaching ability was very important, it wasn't the key criterion for grading the teacher in charge of each class every year. As long as they could pass the city-level qualification assessment every year, that was enough. However, there were always some students who weren't satisfied with Old Pan among the previous graduates. After Old Pan had sent off a batch of students, someone had left an anonymous comment online saying that Old Pan and the headmaster of the school had made a deal behind the scenes. Actually, there were these comments every year, but they were very few and could almost be ignored. However, as Old Pan had been teaching at number 60 high for a long time, the number of these posts had become significant. Under normal circumstances, a new student's favorite thing to do was to search the internet for news about the school or the teachers. There were many posts about Old Pan being defamed on the internet, and the things mentioned in the posts seemed to be true. Thus, many people didn't have a particularly good impression of Old Pan at the beginning of the semester, and felt that she was a particularly rigid and unreasonable person. But after the Ashuego sect incident, everyone's impression of Old Pan had changed a lot. Now, many people realized that Old Pan was actually a very easygoing person who didn't care about the rumors online at all. Actually, when they thought about it carefully, the people who had slandered Old Pan online had all been anonymous, which only showed that their descriptions of the matter were a little unreliable. If the matter was completely true, and they hated Old Pan to the bone, wouldn't it be better to report her with her real name? But in fact, after teaching for so many years, Old Pan had seen more students than she had eaten. In fact, she had long since stopped caring about it. Because it was midterm exams, Old Pan miraculously did not call for her parents this time. She only gave a verbal warning. Then, he took away their phones, stipulating that they would only be able to redeem them if they got into the top 5 in the class in terms of total scores this time. On one hand, Old Pan was worried that calling their parents would affect their mentality for the exam. On the other hand, this was also one of Old Pan's teaching techniques. She was used to calling their parents during tastings, but one day, she suddenly stopped. Instead, it made people feel as if Old Pan had found her conscience. Furthermore, he didn't think the requirement to be in the top 5 was too high. After all, there were only 15 people in the class. Most importantly, the gap between the first and last place in grade 1, class 3 was not too big. Everyone was an elite, and the top students did not compete on their grades, but on who could make fewer mistakes during the exam. During the afternoon self-study session, teacher Yi Han, who taught PE, specially came to the class to look for Wang Ling. Actually, during the morning self-study session, Wang Ling had already noticed teacher Ye's figure swaying at the classroom door, but he hadn't dared come in at that time, because teacher Pan's aura was too strong, like a Buddha standing guard in front of the dais, which made teacher Yi feel uneasy. Wang Ling could roughly guess why teacher Yi had come. He guessed that there was an 80% chance that something had happened at the district sports meet. This time, Wang Ling was taking part in 3 events: the relay race, the medicine ball race, and the Battle of Soul Pets. Although the Battle of Soul Pets was also part of the district sports meet, it was actually just an entertainment event for the sake of good luck. At the door of the classroom, teacher Yi was holding a timetable which had just been finalized by the district, which detailed the dates of each major competition event. However, there were 2 events on the timetable that conflicted with each other. The medicine ball event and the Battle of Soul Pets event were arranged together. Number 60 High Spirit Beast participating this time was already confirmed to be Loopy Toad, and there was no way it could be changed midway. However, Wang Ling still had to participate in the medicine ball event, so teacher Yi felt a little headache coming on. That's the situation. Student Wang Ling, I'm here this time to ask student Wang Ling if you know any friends who can take your place in the Battle of Soul Pets event. The score for the Battle of Soul Pets event was very low, and there was no way teacher Yi would ask Wang Ling to give up the higher scoring medicine ball event for this event. So at this time, the only way was to find someone to take Wang Ling's place and direct Loopy Toad in the battle without affecting the flow of the major competition, so that they could get points for both events. This was a unified process arranged by the district, and there basically wouldn't be any conflicts between the major competitions. In fact, the main reason was that number 60 High didn't have a lot of contestants. A lot of contestants like Ling Jinren were competing in more than one event, and couldn't adjust at all. Number 60 High was still in the process of being promoted from an ordinary high school to a key high school in Songhai City, so the ranking in the district sports meet this time was very important. During the afternoon self-study period, Old Pan was relatively lax. Since they had already finished 2 exams that morning, the students were usually free to do whatever they wanted at noon. Everyone in class had clearly heard what Teacher Yi had said to Wang Ling at the door. Hearing that it was because of the time conflict, Dopey Guo was overjoyed and rushed out of the classroom. Teacher, I can find someone to take Wang Ling's place in the Battle of Soul Pets. You? Can you do it? Teacher Yi gave Dopey Guo a look. Super Chen slowly walked out of the classroom and echoed, Teacher Yi, you don't understand the situation at all. Dopey Guo might really be able to do it. Who in class didn't know that Dopey Guo had uncles all over the world? Dopey Guo, I have a little uncle who's actually only a few years older than me. He's a pet trainer. He's amazing. Teacher Yi broke out in a sweat. Pet trainer. You'll have to pay, we don't have enough funds, so it's best if we join as friends. We can't afford it. Dopey Guo, no need for money. That person's surname is Wei, and Loopy Toad also knows him. I heard that they get along pretty well. Wang Ling knew that Dopey Guo was recommending Wei Ji at that moment. Actually, even if Dopey Guo hadn't said it, the first person Wang Ling had thought of was Wei Ji. Teacher Yi scared. Isn't your surname Guo? Why is your uncle's surname Wei? Dopey Guo was startled. Who told you that an uncle has to be a real uncle? My uncles have hundreds of surnames, they have all kinds of surnames. Chapter 538. The participant list for the Battle of Soul Pets had to be confirmed as soon as possible, so after hearing Dopey Guo's recommendation, Teacher Yi straightaway took out his phone and had Dopey Guo call his little uncle Wei Ji to confirm it in person. There was no problem with Wang Ling. As long as Wei Ji agreed, this matter would basically be settled. After Dopey Guo and Wei Ji picked up the call, Dopey Guo gave a brief summary of the whole situation, and Wei Ji directly roared in excitement, "Damn! Really?" Teacher Yi and Wang Ling could hear Wei Ji's excited roar over the phone. "Let me do it." Teacher Yi took the phone from Dopey Guo with a smile. "Is this Mr. Wei?" "I'm student Guo's PE teacher, my surname is Yi." Wei Ji smiled very happily. I just heard from Dopey Guo. If Teacher Yi is looking for me, you've definitely found the right person. Teacher Yi nodded. Are you really a pet trainer? Wei Ji hummed in acknowledgement. That's right, I'm really a pet trainer. Actually, there was one thing Teacher Yi hadn't said before the call. Although there were very few points for the Battle of Soul Pets this time, these points often became the key to deciding the overall situation. Every school might seem careless, but in fact they were holding back. Reliance High School, for example, had received news from Teacher Yi in the office earlier that they had found an S-level pet trainer to replace Aluminum Tree, the owner of the land shark, Aluminum Small Fish, in the battle. So if Wei Ji was a professional pet trainer, Teacher Yi felt that his chances of winning this match would be much higher than if Wang Ling were to personally take command. Teacher Yi asked softly, "May I ask, what is Mr. Wei's professional level?" Wei Ji was blank. "Is there a limit?" Teacher Yi quickly shook his head. No, there is no limit, but the list of substitutes for the competition needs to be accurately reported. If Mr. Wei Ji confirms that he wants to participate, you'll have to make copies of your ID card and professional certificate for me. Wei Ji nodded. No problem, Teacher Yi. But my level is actually average. There are a lot of people who are better than me when it comes to professional players. As soon as Wei Ji said this, Wang Ling and Dopey Guo immediately knew that this guy was being modest again. Wei Ji's family used to work in the army, but they had been pet trainers since his grandfather's generation. They could be considered a family of pet trainers, so how bad could they be? Furthermore, Wei Ji had signed contracts with more than a dozen spirit beasts of all sizes. This really wasn't a number that an ordinary pet trainer could sign. These humble words made Teacher Yi smile. Of course, he didn't expect a random student from the school to have a strong professional standard. However, if he could get an A, that would be good enough. Thinking of this, Teacher Yi tried to be as tactful as possible and asked, "Mr. Wei Ji, is there a B level?" He purposely lowered his voice to avoid awkwardness. "B class." Wei Ji smiled. "I'm an SSR." Teacher Ye's eyes widened in shock. SSR? Wasn't this only second to the master level? Professional Pet Trainer Master. Teacher Yi remembered that there were no more than 10 people in the country who had obtained the highest professional certification, but there weren't many SSR-level professional pet trainers either. There were no more than 50 of them in the country at the moment. Teacher Yi was stunned. "Mr. Wei Ji, you're a little amazing. Actually, an S-level could already be considered an expert among pet trainers, and an SSR could already be said to be completely above the standard. At this level, it wouldn't be a problem for him to become a PhD instructor at a university." Furthermore, the pet trainer professional course had actually been very popular in the last 2 years. There were a lot of students applying for it, but there was a lack of teachers. Most pet trainers at the master level ran their own guilds and wouldn't specifically choose to teach and educate people. Hence, an SSR like Wei Ji was definitely a rare talent that the government was looking for. Wei Ji was very modest. "I was just lucky. Back then, when I took the exam, I just managed to keep my grade down." Teacher Yi, Wang Ling and Dopey Gua, keeping his grade down, Wang Ling suddenly felt that this Wei Ji might also be a hidden big shot. In the afternoon, Loopy Toad went out on its own to look for Fatty Luo again, accompanied by Sheep. She had been to Fatty Luo's hardware store for maintenance a few times, and was familiar with the place. The matter of looking for Fatty Luo had been decided last night. When Loopy Toad had been eating broccoli, it had only mentioned the Bone King a little, and by the time it got home, Little Master Ling had already made all the necessary arrangements. According to Fatty Luo, customizing a magic weapon would require a detailed discussion face-to-face, and it would be better to design a tailor-made design. As for the production period, that would depend on the difficulty and requirements. Fatty Luo's hardware store was on Amateus Road, which was said to be the former residence of venerated immortal Amateus. In ancient times, it was said that he was the first person to step into venerated immortal Amateus. However, there was very little written about him in any historical records, even less than about immortal Zhenyuan. Although there was a personal profile on the encyclopedia, there was pitifully little concrete information about him. When Sheep brought Loopy Toad in, Fatty Luo was still busy at the counter with his chin in his hands. According to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Fatty Luo had already stopped taking orders for the last 2 days, and was now behind closed doors fiddling with his own business. In fact, Fatty Luo didn't lack money to begin with. From what Loopy Toad knew of him, he was a shut-in weaponsmith who treated the magic treasures he refined as figurines. Because Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had told Wang Ling in advance that Loopy Toad was coming, Loopy Toad directly pushed the door open when they arrived at the shop, which was unlatched. Fatty Luo didn't even raise his head as he studied a map with a magnifying glass. After a while, he sighed. I'm just short of one more material, and I'll have it all." "What material?" Sheep climbed directly onto the counter. Fatty Luo glanced at Sheep's little pink dress. The enhanced paint he had applied the last time had indeed been pretty good. Sheep's body was still as bright as before, and she looked even more natural than when he had painted her a few weeks ago. Loopy Toad also jumped up and moved closer to look at the map in Fatty Luo's hands. A map of Devil Valley. Fatty Luo couldn't help asking, "You know about it?" His heart trembled. When all was said and done, this was Ling Zhenren's dog. It was quite knowledgeable. Loopy Toad nodded. In fact, it had heard Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal mention this a long time ago. Devil Valley was a secret land that opened once every 100 years, but it was actually more of a ruin than a secret land. There were many rare resources in the Devil Valley ruins that couldn't be found in the current world. In the outside world, a lot of people thought that Devil Valley was a secret land set up by an almighty, but after Little Silver joined the team, everyone had a much clearer idea of Devil Valley. The truth was that this Devil Valley ruins actually had a lot to do with holy beasts. This was because it had been left behind by Devil King, the king of holy beasts back then. It was the king of holy beasts that ruled over all holy beasts. This was information that Little Silver had personally told them, so it couldn't be false. But it was a pity. This king of holy beasts' biggest problem was that he was addicted to sleeping. Furthermore, once he fell asleep, he wouldn't wake up for a short period of time, even if the sky collapsed. Thus, in the end, Devil King couldn't avoid the fate of being stewed. Without a leader, the holy beasts were one of the main reasons why they had gone extinct back then. Chapter 539. Therefore, Devil Valley actually had an unknown nickname, Beast King's Ruins. Little Silver was the only one who knew this nickname before. As early as a month ago, Fatty Luo had already entrusted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Little Black to monitor the fluctuations in the Devil Valley remains. However, he was only able to capture a slight fluctuation, so he couldn't be completely sure. Like Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had said, if they wanted to enter this Beast King's remains, they would need some lucky chances. Furthermore, once Devil Valley opened, cultivators from all over the world would think of ways to enter the remains, which contained all kinds of extinct resources. Fatty Luo's goal was very clear. He wanted a 1,000 dried bone. Because of this, he had been worrying about it for a whole month. "Where did you get this map?" Loopy Toad asked. "I bought it from a treasure map merchant." Fatty Luo said, "There's something you don't know. Ever since Beast King's remains Devil Valley was detected the last time the fluctuations were detected, it has been fermenting. Now, all the countries at home and abroad that have the technology to monitor spatial fluctuations are keeping an eye on it. Furthermore, based on historical records of Beast King's remains, the entrance to Devil Valley is only open within Huaxiao Nation's borders. In order to prevent foreign forces from infiltrating, domestic visas have been much stricter recently." Loopy Toad nodded slightly. After all, Beast King's remains contained resources that were already extinct in the present world, so it wasn't surprising that so many people were fighting over them. "Actually, I'm afraid of those foreign forces that have illegally entered Devil Valley in order to fight for its resources. The cultivation system of Western cultivators is slightly different from ours. Now that we're in an era of peace and they're thinner, I'm afraid they'll be harder to deal with." Fatty Luo looked at the treasure map and pondered. Loopy Toad pursed its lips. Judging from Fatty Luo's attitude toward this matter, he had already gone all out. Treasure map merchants had always prioritized profit above all else. Fatty Luo had clearly spent a lot of money to obtain this map of Devil Valley. But in fact, this map was not the entire map of Devil Valley. It was only drawn by the map dealer based on the confessions of the cultivators who had gone to Devil Valley and walked out safely. According to Little Silver, Beast King's remains was very big and full of danger. As the king of beasts, Devil King had put a lot of effort into building Devil Valley back then. This was because the purpose of establishing this Devil Valley was actually to build a Beast King tomb for the Devil King himself. But unfortunately, in the end, Devil King did not end up in the tomb, but in the pot. "Once upon a time, I dreamed of making a peerless godly sword like the master of Immortal Mansion did. But after seeing Lord Jinka, I realized that it was all for naught. If one day I can personally make a suitable scabbard for Lord Jinka, I can die without regrets." Fatty Luo grit his teeth. The corner of Loopy Toad's eye twitched. "Are you exaggerating?" "Of course not. You don't understand. Designing a scabbard for a divine sword that you love, this is the romance of an armament master." Fatty Luo cupped his face in his hands. When he thought of Jinka, he couldn't help looking like a young girl in love for the first time. "Don't you feel like you're putting on silk stockings for the girl you love?" Loopy Toad and Sheep. At the mention of Jinka, Fatty Luo appeared very excited. This is the first step in my plan for Lord Jinka. Loopy Toad was blank as it asked, the first step of the plan. Fatty Luo nodded very solemnly. After I design a scabbard for Lord Jinka, I want to show Lord Jinka's heroism to the whole world. So I'm going to invest a huge sum of money into a big movie with Lord Jinka as the theme. The tentative name is The Sword Spirit We Chased Together All Those Years. I even wrote the script a while ago. Loopy Toad. Saying this, spirit light flashed in Fatty Luo's hand as he took out the script and couldn't help acting out the plot on the spot. He would play the male and female leads according to the script. The male lead's name was Jinka, and Fatty Luo hadn't thought of a name for the female lead for the time being. It officially began. Fatty Luo pinched his throat and started acting from the female lead's point of view. How can you be so childish? Then, he instantly switched back to Jinka's point of view. Childish. Female lead, yes, very childish. Jinka, that's right. I'm childish to chase after such a studious master like you. I'm childish to be able to sign a contract with you for so long. Female lead, then don't chase me anymore. Jinka turns to leave. Female lead sweated profusely. Idiot. Jinka, that's right. I'm an idiot. Female lead, big idiot. Jinka, that's why big idiot chased you for so long. The performance was over. Fatty Luo took a deep breath. How was it? My performance. After watching Fatty Luo's performance, Loopy Toad and Sheep were completely stupefied. Fatty Luo's performance was too lifelike and shocking. Furthermore, his lines were so simple and crude that they even felt like they were being brainwashed. Fatty Luo's words echoed in Loopy Toad's and Sheep's minds like magic after the performance was over. After a few minutes of silence, Loopy Toad finally couldn't help asking, is this a romance movie? A romance movie? Fatty Luo waved his hand. Who would watch a romance movie now? This is a large-scale fantasy thriller sci-fi bitter Mary Sue movie. Loopy Toad and Sheep were stupefied. After Fatty Luo said this, Loopy Toad felt like its entire body was in trouble. These big plans are still in the preparatory stage. Of course, the most important thing right now is to design a suitable scabbard for Lord Jinka. Fatty Luo put away the script in his hands with a very pleased expression on his face. Don't reveal any spoilers for now, although I can already tell from the expressions on your faces that my movie will definitely explode at the box office in the future. Loopy Toad sucked in a cold breath of air as it listened. It didn't know if the box office would explode or not, but the people who watched the movie would definitely explode. But given Fatty Luo's innate sense of humor, there was a chance that this movie would really be a hit. By the way, you came to me this time to customize a magic weapon, right? Can you show me the materials? Fatty Luo looked at Loopy Toad as he returned to the topic at hand. Loopy Toad directly spat out the Bone King, and Fatty Luo's eyes instantly lit up. My God, this is the bone of a holy beast. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had actually already explained the specifics to Fatty Luo last night, but when Fatty Luo saw the bone, he couldn't help trembling all over and even blushing a little. Loopy Toad already didn't have the energy to ridicule Fatty Luo's orgasmic face. It was really an eyesore. Loopy Toad, didn't you already know last night? How can hearing it and seeing it with my own eyes be the same? Fatty Luo clicked his tongue. An excellent artificer will only respond to two things. One is a first-rate magic weapon, and the other is high-quality raw materials. There aren't many magic weapons and raw materials that can make my face flush. Suddenly, Loopy Toad asked, then what about Jinka? The moment it asked this question, Loopy Toad actually already regretted it. Fatty Luo stared at Loopy Toad and smiled slightly before he whispered in its ear, to tell you the truth, brother dog. I got hard at that time. Chapter 540. Fatty Luo spent about 5 minutes inspecting the bone in his hand inside out. This is a holy beast's bone. The surface of the bone is smooth, and it's been preserved very well. He couldn't help sniffing it. And I don't know why, but I seem to smell a hint of wildness on it. It's been so long, but there's still the smell of a dog on it. Loopy Toad, before I got this bone, a Fenrir hugged it and licked it every day. Cough, cough. Fatty Luo looked a little embarrassed as he stared at Loopy Toad and asked, "Brother Dog, what do you think about custom-made magic treasures? The most important thing is that it's easy to use. Also, this is Dog Saint's bone, so it's best if it's representative when you design it. It would be best if it could be multifunctional." Loopy Toad replied. "Alright, I have a rough idea." Fatty Luo stroked the bone and waved his hand with a smile. "You can pick it up the day after tomorrow. I just had a super awesome idea. I guarantee you'll be satisfied. The day after tomorrow. So soon." This speed was a little beyond Loopy Toad's understanding. As technology advanced nowadays, it was already possible to combine relevant calculations when refining magic treasures to greatly increase the success rate and reduce the refining time. However, in order to refine a holy beast bone into a magic treasure in less than 3 days, it would be extremely difficult. Admittedly, Fatty Luo's skills were acknowledged in the circle as good, but this speed was a little exaggerated. Nowadays, all the more advanced refining shops have time rooms for refining weapons, but they can't be used inside, so you can only put the raw materials inside and control them from outside. "Brother Dog, you're pretty lucky. I just installed one here last month, and it's really expensive." Fatty Luo said. Loopy Toad calculated the time. If it could get the item the day after tomorrow, it would actually be just in time for the school's district sports meet. Loopy Toad and Sheep didn't stay at Fatty Luo's place for too long. After handing the Bone King to Fatty Luo, Sheep took Loopy Toad back home. Of course, Fatty Luo hadn't done it for nothing. Logically speaking, given Fatty Luo's refining skills, he would be paid a lot for a custom-made magic treasure. After his initial communication with grenade-throwing Senior Immortal last night, Fatty Luo didn't ask for the refining fee, but hoped that after the custom-made magic treasure was successfully refined, Ling Jinren would agree to a reasonable request. Wang Ling had already agreed to this. Of course. Loopy Toad guessed that Fatty Luo's request was most likely related to Jinka. This person's obsession with Jinka was too deep. By the time Loopy Toad and Sheep returned home, it was already evening, which just so happened to be when Wang Ling had finished school. The first thing Loopy Toad did when it got home was to continue studying its 7 basic dog skills. Apart from the first and second forms, which were level 4, the rest were all level 5 dog skills, which were a little difficult to understand. But Loopy Toad wasn't in a hurry. It planned to learn the first and second forms first. It had been studying the first and second forms in its free time these days, and had actually already pretty much figured them out. Holding the small white lace umbrella that Wang Ling had given her before, Sheep sat on the stone steps in front of the door and watched Loopy Toad box. This scene looked a little miraculous. It was clearly a dog that hadn't transformed, but could walk upright like a human and also box like a human. Loopy Toad disassembled the first and second forms, and all the dog skills flowed through its mind. After trying them out 2 or 3 times, Loopy Toad's movements gradually became coherent, and it began to move smoothly from the opening stance to the rest of the dog skills. The essence of the basic dog skills was fast, accurate and ruthless. They were actually very simple movements that didn't look fancy at all. But back then, Dog Saint had relied on this move to beat up all the leaders of the Holy Dog Clan. This move actually had another name, dog beating skills. The speed at which the 7 forms of the dog skills were unleashed was progressively faster. The first form required 81 punches in 1 second to be considered initiated, and the second form required 162 punches. According to Little Silver, Dog Saint's 7th form back then had directly punched out 5,184 times. If you cultivated the 7 forms of the basic dog skills to the peak and used all 7 forms, you would ultimately be able to throw over 10,000 powerful punches in 1 second. I'll hit. In the back garden, Loopy Toad was wearing a yellow tight-fitting exercise suit as it waved its fists swiftly. Mother Wong had recently made this exercise suit for Loopy Toad. Although the Wong family's small villa was usually a little remote and rarely visited, considering that sheep would sometimes be sunbathing in the garden, Mother Wong had still made Loopy Toad a small suit. As a male Akita, and an intelligent Akita at that, it was unsightly for him to swing his lower body around in front of a little girl while he was practicing martial arts. Loopy Toad thanked Mother Wong from the bottom of its heart. In fact, it usually chose to cultivate when sheep wasn't around. Fortunately, Mother Wong had made it a suit, otherwise it would have been a little shameful if sheep just stared at it while it was cultivating today. Holding the small umbrella, Sheep watched in boredom. "Do you want me to help?" she suddenly asked. Loopy Toad looked at Sheep. "Sure." To be honest, Loopy Toad felt that its current strength wasn't on the same level as Sheep's. After all, Sheep had been directly enlightened by Little Master Ling, and she had mastered one of the 3,000 great spells, the Great Rapid Movement spell, which gave her extremely high speed and evasion. If Sheep got serious, Loopy Toad wouldn't be able to hit her with these 2 dog skills. But when practicing the dog skills, it was of course best if there was a target for actual combat. Cultivating hard would only create all kinds of obstacles when it was time to put it into practice. Holding the small umbrella, Sheep stood in front of Loopy Toad. "Oh, for the sake of fairness, I won't use the Heavenly Dao. If you can touch me, it'll be very amazing. I'll do my best." Loopy Toad took a deep breath. To be honest, even if Sheep didn't use the Heavenly Dao, Loopy Toad felt that it would already be amazing if it could touch her. But if it didn't use the Heavenly Dao, its chances of doing so would undoubtedly be much higher. At that moment, Loopy Toad stood in front of Sheep and took a deep breath. Spirit energy slowly coalesced in its body and gradually flowed to its front and back paws. Looking ahead, it closed its eyes slightly and focused its mind. At the same time, it silently recited the incantation of the basic dog skills: Dog Strength and Dog Family live and die, the basic dog skills are invincible, the first fist of the starting stance. Chapter 541. This punch was extraordinarily powerful, and Loopy Toad felt as if its paw was accumulating explosive power. So-called practice and actual combat were 2 completely different things. This was a feeling it had never experienced during practice. Loopy Toad felt its body heat up as it punched out with the first punch. Although its paw was very small, the power of this punch was already no less than a punch from a soul formation cultivator. Logically speaking, it was impossible for a second-class spirit beast to exert the power of a soul formation cultivator, but Loopy Toad's body still had the incomplete Great Sword Dao spell. Although it had only accepted 40% of the power of Sword Dao so far, the strengthening effect on its strength was already very obvious. Especially when it got serious, the power of Sword Dao was already invisibly strengthening the basic dog skills. Not only did this punch have the super high attack speed of the basic dog skills, it was also mixed with the sharpness of the power of Sword Dao. This sharpness caused the power of Loopy Toad's dog skills to increase exponentially. Sheep was also a little astonished. She had never expected Loopy Toad's punch to be so powerful. Wild gusts of air blew against Sheep's cheeks, causing her bun head to bounce along with the turbulence. But this kind of attack speed was still far from enough for Sheep. Holding the small umbrella, her little body swayed as if she were dancing in the garden. "Too slow." Holding the umbrella, Sheep easily evaded the attacks. In 1 second, Loopy Toad's 81 punches of the first form didn't touch Sheep at all. Loopy Toad's eyes followed Sheep's movements as it attacked at such a fast speed. This definitely wasn't her dodging at full speed, but even so, Loopy Toad could only see a faint shadow. This speed was really too fast, but Loopy Toad was well aware that it couldn't catch it at all with its current eyesight. After a while, Loopy Toad stopped attacking, and instead stared at Sheep as it pondered what to do. Holding the small umbrella, Sheep narrowed her eyes and smiled as she explained, "My current speed corresponds to the maximum speed you can display at your current level." Really too abnormal. Loopy Toad couldn't help muttering in its heart. It had never expected that the extreme speed of a second-stage beast could be so dazzling. Loopy Toad felt that it needed to find its own style of attack. However, judging from the current situation, it was obvious that it was not a speed-type player. Every spirit beast's characteristics were different, and they all had their own unique advantages based on their breed and grade. But Loopy Toad's current state was even more special. It had been formed after its soul and body had been reunited. When he was still a toad, his specialty was defense and control. He was a standard, fattened type of character. But now, his soul had been integrated into an Akita. The key was that Akita was not a spirit dog. If his soul hadn't been that of a Demon King and Little Masterling had improved the Demon King Heart Sutra, he wouldn't have been able to cultivate it at all. Akita Inu, this breed, Loopy Toad really couldn't think of any other advantages apart from using it as an emoji pack to act cute. However, judging from the degree of familiarity between his soul and physical body, he still had to wait. That was because his previous narcolepsy hadn't been completely eliminated. After bathing in the first holy beast blood provided by Little Silver, the symptoms of narcolepsy had only lessened a lot. As long as this narcolepsy persisted, it was proof that the soul and physical body weren't completely compatible yet. In a little over a month or two at most, Loopy Toad would be able to completely adapt to this body. In fact, it was only after it had completely accepted this body that it would be able to study its specific advantages. Looks like I'll have to think about it carefully in the future. Loopy Toad pondered deeply. Although it hadn't even touched Sheep's body just now, this actual combat had been a great inspiration for Loopy Toad. Loopy Toad was currently still at the stage of adapting and researching the development and application of this body. Apart from the tongue technique and the space-swallowing spell, which were two minor spells that could be used normally even with spirit energy, Loopy Toad had already completely discarded all the other spells of the Toad clan. Since it had chosen to live in the modern human world of cultivators, it had chosen to live with Little Master Ling. At this stage, Loopy Toad's small goal for itself was to work hard to adapt to its new life and become a dog that Little Master Ling wouldn't bring out to embarrass himself. After it finished cultivating, Loopy Toad ran to the backyard and took off its yellow exercise clothes and put them in a bamboo basket. This was what Mother Wong had prepared for Loopy Toad. It had to be washed promptly after each cultivation session. The Toad clan was originally lazy and didn't bother about trifles. Sometimes, after falling asleep, they might not shower for several years. But after Loopy Toad had turned into a dog and followed Wong Ling, it realized that it loved cleanliness more. Loopy Toad felt that it had been deeply influenced by Little Master Ling when it came to this love of cleanliness. Little Master Ling's bedroom was spotless every day, and Mother Wong almost didn't need to clean it. Especially recently, because Loopy Toad had shed a little due to its diligent cultivation, Little Master Ling cleaned it even more diligently than before. When Loopy Toad entered the bedroom, it could even smell a fragrant scent. Loopy Toad felt that for a boy's bedroom, Wong Ling was really too clean. In contrast, Wei Ji's house was actually very casual. Loopy Toad had gone to take a look. In addition to the eco-house that had been built for pushing large butterfly, Wei Ji's own bedroom was piled with a lot of junk, from Spirit Beast magazines to snacks to all kinds of daily necessities, which were all casually piled on the table. For little Master Ling, these were all forbidden areas. Admittedly, this had to do with personal habits. Wei Ji had to wake up early and work late every day to take care of so many contracted spirit beasts, so he actually didn't have the time to tidy up at all. Like Master, like Spirit Beast, Loopy Toad now felt that this was true at all. Loopy Toad's deepest impression was that all the books and test papers around Little Master Ling, as long as they were made of paper, the corners were always flat. If they were bent even the slightest bit, Little Master Ling wouldn't hesitate to use the power of Heavenly Tao to break them down and then reassemble them. After putting the exercise clothes into the bamboo basket, Loopy Toad turned on the faucet in the back garden to wash itself. As it shook off the water, it circulated its spirit energy to quickly heat up its body, and in less than 10 seconds, it was dry. Through the glass door in the back garden, Loopy Toad saw Father Wong and Lai Meng Meng on the sofa watching a TV show, and they looked very nervous. Loopy Toad suddenly remembered that today was July 17th. It was also the day of the month's double monthly votes battle on Father Wong's novel, Cultivation Chinese Network. It would run from the 15th to the 17th, and today was the last day of the double monthly votes. This TV show was a ballot counting program that Cultivation Chinese Network was connected to a TV station. Currently, the author in first place on the monthly votes list, Braised Pork Shoulder, monthly votes, 980120. Second place on the monthly votes list, Braised Pig Feet in Sauce, monthly votes, 965772. Father Wong's pen name, Wong Situ, was third. Monthly votes, 462333. Chapter 542. It's actually only third place. To be honest, Lai Meng Meng was very surprised by this result. Although Father Wong's new book had only been out for less than 2 months, the readers on the website were satisfied with it at 87%, which was a very high figure. Furthermore, a major feature of Father Wong's novels was that readers were very loyal. Based on this, Father Wong's chapters had an average of 300,000 subscriptions. This was an astonishing figure. The most important thing was that this 300,000 was just the number of subscriptions on Cultivation Chinese Network. Father Wong also had a considerable number of subscriptions on more than 40 other novel partner platforms. Of course, Father Wong couldn't see these subscriptions on his back end, but Lai Meng Meng would take a look every month. Currently, subscriptions on all of Father Wong's channels were about to break 1 million. Of course, the success of Father Wong's last book, Let Go of That Wet Nurse, was a big factor in his astonishing sales. Even so, the number of votes in this month's battle for double monthly votes had reached an unprecedented and frightening level. The monthly votes of the first and second place authors were almost the same, and they were about to break 1 million. This month's monthly votes were a little exaggerated. Brother Wong, what should we do? Lai Meng Meng was a little anxious. How about you break out? Beg for monthly votes. Break out. Father Wong raised an eyebrow. Didn't I just break out yesterday? It's impossible for me to break out in the near future. Absolutely impossible. If I break out, I'll lose a few years of my life. The gains don't make up for the losses. You want me to break out? I'd rather dress in women's clothing for monthly votes, okay? I can wear black stockings, but only if I don't show my face. I want my face. Lai Meng Meng was stunned. To think that Father Wong could come up with such a shameless plan. This was already quite shameless. Brother, don't, it's too hard on the eyes if you dress in women's clothing, Lai Meng Meng said. Besides, even if you don't show your face and wear black stockings, you still have to shave your legs, which is very troublesome. Also, it's actually not very good for men to shave their legs. The EL department had organized a trip to the hot spring before, and both Father Wang and Lai Mengmeng had gone. While soaking in the hot spring, Lai Mengmeng had seen Father Wang's thick leg hair. If he had to describe it, Lai Mengmeng felt that if he shaved off all Father Wang's leg hair, he could fry a pot of chives. No matter what, brother, I think this ticket is abnormal. Hugging a pillow, Lai Mengmeng sat on the sofa and defended Father Wang. Father Wang silently lit a cigarette and was very calm. What's so unusual about it? It was very normal for people to be willing to spend money on their favorite authors. Moreover, braised pork shoulder and braised pig feet in soy sauce were also veteran authors on the website, right? It's not like you don't know that rich readers can increase their monthly votes just by sending red packets. Lai Mengmeng sighed. This was actually his negligence. He should have realized it earlier. Lai Mengmeng had initially thought that, given Father Wang's current position as number 1 in all the major lists, his position as number 1 in the overall monthly votes this month should be a given, so he hadn't paid much attention to him. In the end, today was the last day of the double monthly votes event. Lai Mengmeng was completely dumbfounded when he saw the number of votes publicly displayed on TV. As of midnight today, there were still 6 hours left for the double monthly votes. To be honest, Lai Mengmeng felt that it was really too difficult to close the gap of nearly 500,000 monthly votes in these 6 hours. But if he didn't seize this opportunity to double the monthly votes, it would be even more difficult to overtake Father Wang after the event was over. Lai Mengmeng looked at the book review sections for the 2 authors at the top of the monthly votes list. Sure enough, because there wasn't much of a difference in the number of votes between them, the fans of both sides had already launched a series of canvassing campaigns in the book review sections for the authors they supported. The battle for the monthly votes was actually a way to boost the morale of fans. Furthermore, Cultivation Chinese Network had now withdrawn the fan nameplate campaign. As long as you supported an author, you would hang that author's nameplate next to your ID. If the author's monthly votes site won, the fans who supported the author would definitely be full of glory. But once the battle for the monthly votes entered a white-hot stage, it was inevitable that a war of words would break out between fans who supported different authors. Although Lai Mengmeng hadn't been employed for long, and it had only been a few years, he had gained a lot of experience over the last few years. As a veteran who had entered the industry even earlier than Lai Mengmeng, Father Wang looked like he was already used to all kinds of storms. He didn't even need to look at the book review section to know what was going on. Have the fans of both sides already started fighting each other? Lai Mengmeng, it seems like it's pretty big. A fan of braised pork shoulders leader entered the fan group of braised pig feet in sauce's leader, and because of some conflict, kicked out pig feet's leader's fan group. Both sides are now fighting over this matter. Father Wang sked. The authors on both sides haven't said anything yet, have they? Lai Mengmeng shook his head. Not yet, but there are more and more onlookers. It's not just our site where the fans of both sides are fighting, everyone in other literary forums knows about it and is talking about it. That's right. Father Wang nodded. Who was the happiest when fans fought? Of course it was the authors. This move, which looked like a quarrel, was in fact a happy and harmonious method of canvassing for votes. In Father Wang's view, it was actually quite brilliant. In this way, not only did it stimulate the reader's desire to canvass for votes for the authors they supported, it also attracted a large number of onlookers to gather around and read the books. Subscriptions rose, new fans emerged, and Father Wang also received a lot of tips. Father Wang stared at the tally of votes on the TV screen. After about 5 minutes, he said, "Look, did braised pork shoulder make a statement in a separate chapter?" Lai Mengmeng flipped through his phone and said in surprise, "It's true. He made a separate chapter." "Brother Wang, how would you know if you didn't look at your phone?" Father Wang pointed at the TV. The number of votes on TV just went up again, and braised pork shoulder is now almost 1. 1 million. He must have made a statement to instigate a wave of excitement in the readers. Lai Mengmeng refreshed the list of novels, and was shaken again. F***K. He made 2 separate chapters in a row. And the title of the second single chapter is very domineering. It's called, Please Shatter the Sky with Me. It's fine, we can catch up. By 12 o'clock, I'm guessing he'll only have 1,500,000 votes at most. I'll find someone later to straightaway push it to 3 million for me, Father Wong said lightly. Bro, but now, we only have close to 500,000 votes. Won't we be suspected of vote rigging if we do this? Lai Mengmeng was suddenly a little worried. At that moment, Lai Mengmeng suddenly noticed that Father Wong had already finished smoking and was switching to cigars. Father Wong raised an eyebrow. Manipulating votes. His braised pork shoulder had an average subscription of 150,000, so he could get 1.5 million monthly tickets. I have 300,000 tickets, what's wrong with 3 million monthly tickets? Lai Mengmeng, Father Wong, edit a separate chapter for me. I'll do the talking, you write it. Lai Mengmeng quickly nodded. All right. Where's the title? Father Wong, the title will be, What Do I Need This Iron Rod For? Lai Mengmeng. Chapter 543. Father Wong was already a veteran god on the website, and there was no one in the online literature circle who didn't know his pen name Wong Situ. It was actually very common for authors to fight for monthly votes. The tougher an author's attitude toward fighting for votes, the stronger the sense of honor and cohesiveness of their fans. In Father Wong's view, this fight between braised pork shoulder and braised pig feet in sauce was very clever. Both of them were first-tier authors with high sales, and after this incident, they had increased their popularity. They wanted to take advantage of this double monthly votes opportunity to use their huge advantage in terms of votes to thoroughly crush him this month. Some young readers were too easily motivated. When they saw an author's lofty single chapter acceptance speech, they were especially prone to impulse spending, and would reward the author they supported while eating instant noodles. Of course, it was everyone's freedom to support someone, but Father Wong had always felt that one should consider things in the light of one's own circumstances and be a little more rational. For some readers who didn't have extra money to fight for monthly votes, simply subscribing to the official version was in fact already the greatest encouragement for the author. Thus, Father Wong basically wouldn't take the initiative to ask his readers for monthly votes or rewards. Even so, given his current status in the circle, Father Wong still topped the monthly rankings in all aspects. But he still had to publish the chapters that needed to be published, so Father Wong's chapters were usually filled with words of comfort. Brother, go ahead, I'm ready. Lai Mengmeng had already logged into the background using Father Wong's author account, and was ready to write a single chapter statement. Title, What Do I Need This Iron Rod For? Just write it like this. Father Wong nodded his head. Situ hasn't even reached the halfway mark when his path to godhood is blocked. Today, he's third in the monthly votes, and the gap is huge. This is indeed a critical moment of life and death, but Situ isn't anxious at all. Thanks to all my readers' love, Situ Lian will deliver the final blow at midnight tonight to overtake everyone. Although this book has only been published for 2 months, Situ also wants to fight for first place in this year's annual ranking list. Call me Situ crazy, but I'm Wong Situ, and I won't turn back until I hit the south wall. With this final blow, I will definitely turn everything into ashes. Lai Mengmeng, after he finished writing, Lai Mengmeng clicked send and actually breathed a sigh of relief. Can we really make it? He looked at the increasing gap in the votes on the TV and could not help but feel a little doubtful. The last book, Father Wong's Let Go of That Wet Nurse, had crushed the other books almost every month without a doubt. This was the first time that there had been such a huge disparity in votes. But in fact, in Father Wang's view, the monthly votes ranking this time was just a small change. The authors of braised pork shoulder and braised pig feet in soy sauce were both very good. But unfortunately, they had underestimated the depth of Father Wang's fan group. There was an epic-level big shot overseeing Father Wang's official fan group. In a normal situation, when there was such a huge difference in votes, Father Wang just needed to send this old friend a private message. At the same time, in a magnificent rectangular building in Jinghua City, Huaxiao Alliance building in the heart of Jinghua City. Huaxiao Alliance, whose full name was Huaxiao Alliance of Cultivators, was a cultivator organization directly under the jurisdiction of the state. What Huaxiao Alliance managed was all the recorded light forces in the whole of Huaxiao Nation. All the cultivators sects that were currently operating legally were under Huaxiao Alliance's jurisdiction, including the Society of Saints that had sprung up previously and was said to be a gathering of a large number of talented young cultivators, which was also under Huaxiao Alliance. Tonight, there would be an internal high-level meeting in Huaxiao Alliance's most exclusive conference hall on the top floor, and the 10 founding generals would all be present. General Yi Jianchuan, and Marshal Jiang Lei, arrived at the same time downstairs of the building. At the gate, a burly man in a special service uniform stopped the two of them. "Chiefs, please cooperate with us. This is just routine work." "Very well, go ahead." General Yi and Marshal Jiang nodded one after another. Special service personnel like this burly man in front of them densely covered the entire Huaxiao Alliance building. These people had been trained by Magnificent Immortal, and were already the most senior guards. Wherever this group was, the area within a radius of 50 li would be cleared out. In order to hold tonight's high-level meeting, all roads within a radius of 50 li around the Huaxiao Alliance building had been sealed off. Except for the guards and personnel involved in the meeting, no one was allowed to pass through. The special service personnel held a bronze mirror in their hands and shone it on Yi Jianchuan's and Jiang Lei's faces. This magic mirror was fused with a great spell to distinguish between truth and falsehood, and any disguise would be exposed. After confirming General Yi's and Marshal Jiang's identities, the nearby special service personnel saluted them at the same time, and the burly man in charge of checking their identities quickly stepped aside to make way for them. "Chiefs, please come in. Thank you for your cooperation. Has the head of state arrived?" General Yi, dressed in exercise clothes, floated in the air as usual. The burly man replied respectfully, "Yes, Chief. The head of state arrived half an hour ago." General Yi nodded slightly and didn't say anything else as he directly rushed to the conference hall on the top floor with Marshal Jiang. When the two of them arrived at the conference hall, they found that most of the participants had already arrived, and all of them were familiar faces. Body Saint Minister Shi, nicknamed Body Saint Body of Steel, who had relied on his powerful physique back then to fight the 7 demon gods in the Battle of Sherman without falling. Wisdom Saint President Qi, president of the Cultivation Academy of Science, who was in charge of the layout and various holy arrays. Spirit Saint Secretary Sun Dakong, the current helmsman of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools and the direct leader of the General Administration of 100 Schools, who had the ability to listen to the voices of all living things. Weapons Saint Minister Ku, director of Huaxiao's Magic Treasure Munitions Factory, who was proficient in the use of a variety of magic treasures. Dark Saint Minister Ing, head of the Intelligence Department, who traveled the country year-round on counter-espionage reconnaissance missions. His whereabouts were mysterious, his body movement superb, and he was proficient in the use of illusions. Medicine Saint President Luo, president of the Military Hospital General Hospital, who had a strong regenerative ability and could survive even if he only had his head left. Blade Master General Yi, Battle Saint Marshal Jiang, and the head of state sitting at the very front with his head bowed in deep thought. Now there were only 2 generals left, and the 10 founding generals had all been assembled. The last two people who hadn't arrived just happened to be ranked first and second in terms of overall combat strength. One was Bai Xing, chairman of the state-owned enterprise Huaxing, who was currently Huaxing's largest manufacturer of smart products and had a unique explosive spell. Also known as Explosion Saint, General Bai Xing. General Bai's overall combat strength was currently ranked first. Chapter 544. General Yi and Marshal Jiang sat down in their designated seats one after another. President Qi happened to be presiding over the meeting this time. He put down his coffee cup and stood up from his chair. Everyone, Explosion Saint General Bai and Skin Saint Minister Ku are on a mission. The two of them went together. The rest of them were stunned. These two people had extremely high combat strength, and it was really rare for them to work together on a mission. In fact, just based on the sudden announcement of a high-level meeting, it was enough to prove the urgency of this matter. It was likely that the crisis of this matter was imminent. President Qi nodded. That's right, General Bai and Minister Ku have gone together. Thus, the 8 of us will discuss this meeting, and the head of state will make the final decision. General Bai and Minister Ku have already discussed the contents of this meeting. They have no objections at all, and will listen to the organization's arrangements. I will be presiding over this meeting. Everyone nodded. Good. President Qi smiled slightly, then turned his gaze to the head of state next to him. I'm sure everyone can already tell that the head of state today seems a little different. This isn't the real head of state. Spirit Saint Secretary Sun Dakong narrowed his eyes. He could hear the voices of all living things, so he could naturally pick up on the clues. In fact, he had already noticed it when he had arrived. That's right, the head of state you're seeing now is an imitation weapon developed by our Academy of Science. But it's currently still in the experimental stage and hasn't been announced to the public, so it can't be mass-produced. The head of state you're seeing now is a humanoid magic treasure, and its greatest power is currently infinitely close to that of an itinerant immortal. President Qi said, this humanoid magic treasure has actually been in the works for a very long time. Previously, it was my Huaxiao Academy of Science and Weapons Saint Minister Ku who carried out secret research, and it wasn't until today that we received the head of state's permission that we made it public. I'm really sorry. Business is business, old Qi, you're too polite. General Yi couldn't help laughing. Although I can sense that there's something different about the head of state, I can't be completely sure. But to actually be able to make it look so real is truly shocking. Staring at this humanoid magic treasure that was almost identical to the head of state, Marshal Jiang couldn't help marveling. What about its performance? Asked Medicine Saint Dean Luo. Dean Luo was the only woman among the 10 generals, and she was a very beautiful woman. Her brown hair was tied up in a bun, and she wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, which gave her the air of an elite. The basic performance has been debugged. Of course, everyone here knows how powerful the head of state is. He is far more powerful than this humanoid artifact. President Qi replied, this is our country's first humanoid magic treasure based on the head of state, number 001. The command of the humanoid artifact is connected to the head of state's neurons and can be directly controlled by the head of state. You can understand it as a kind of contract. However, humanoid Dharma treasures don't have artifact spirits because of their special craftsmanship. If we can reach the stage of mass production in the future, we can theoretically achieve mass contracts. However, how many contracts one can sign is actually greatly related to one's own strength, because the amount of spiritual power needed to control multiple humanoid magic treasures is also very considerable. All the generals present nodded. They had basically understood the purpose of this humanoid magic treasure. Does that humanoid magic treasure have artificial intelligence? At that moment, Secretary Dakong asked a rather crucial question. Given Huaxiao Nation's level of technology, it actually wasn't difficult to implement artificial intelligence. However, President Xi shook his head. At this stage, we don't intend to use humanoid magic treasures with artificial intelligence. If it's combined with artificial intelligence, the humanoid magic treasure will have the ability to think on its own, and there will be no point in signing contracts. Everyone understood. To put it bluntly, they were afraid that after the humanoid magic treasure was combined with artificial intelligence, it would gain intelligence and learn to think, and in the end, it would go out of control. In order to avoid this kind of situation, signing contracts and controlling it remotely was clearly the best way. When Old Qi said this, Wang Ming was also listening remotely in the research institute. But he couldn't see the image, and could only listen to the contents of the meeting, because he was one of the great contributors behind the scenes in the research on this humanoid magic treasure. President Xi and the head of state had also reported the contents of the meeting to him for approval and permission to listen in. Of course, only President Xi, the head of state, and Wang Ming knew about this. For now, Wang Ming's identity was still a secret. When he heard the topic of artificial intelligence, Wang Ming couldn't help laughing. In fact, a lot of so-called artificial intelligence nowadays was pseudo-intelligence. True artificial intelligence could think on its own. However, the so-called artificial intelligence on the market was actually the result of software programming, and couldn't learn to reason and think on its own in the truest sense. Powerful magic treasures all had artifact spirits, which were formed after the spirit energy of heaven and earth fused with it day after day, and when the affinity between the artifact and its master reached a certain level. However, if artificial intelligence could be combined with a magic treasure, it could actually completely realize the idea of an artificial artifact spirit. But at the moment, this kind of technology was banned by a convention signed by various countries. In the end, people were still afraid of the idea of artificial intelligence destroying theory. Back to the humanoid magic treasure itself. Huaxiao Nation had always pursued peace above all else. Although the humanoid magic treasure could also be used as a weapon, this was the least of its uses. When General Yi, Secretary Dakang, Marshal Jiang, Dark Saint, Medicine Saint, and the others heard this, they knew that the ultimate use of this humanoid magic treasure was to protect the head of state himself. However, this was probably already classified as a top-secret experiment. As for why they had chosen to announce it at this time, everyone who had heard this already had an idea in their hearts. This was because it was very likely to be related to what President Xi was going to say next, which was the theme of this meeting. None of them spoke as they quietly waited for President Xi to explain. At the very front, this number 001 simulation of the head of state was still sitting with its head lowered in deep thought. This was actually a specific posture when it was in standby mode. Everyone, I believe that everyone already knows what I'm going to say next. Chapter 545. Sure enough. President Xi's words made everyone feel at ease. In fact, everyone present could vaguely guess what President Xi was going to say next. Wang Ming, who was listening to the meeting on the other side, also had a calm expression on his face. He had known about this earlier than anyone else in the meeting, because the magic treasure, God I One, which had been used to monitor space fluctuations back then had been created based on his theory and the work of hundreds of scientific researchers. Old Qi had already analyzed the whole thing with him early on, including the origin of Devil Valley, so it could be said that Wang Ming couldn't be any calmer. The way Devil Valley appeared was a bit similar to the Gate Between Worlds, but it was also different. The Gate Between Worlds could only monitor the fluctuations in space. It could predict when the Gate Between Worlds would descend, but it could not accurately calculate where it would land. However, Devil Valley could be accurately pinpointed using the most sophisticated magic treasure instruments, such as the God I One. And this was precisely the most troublesome part of the whole thing. Everyone here is no stranger to Devil Valley. In fact, some of you have personally gone to Devil Valley to take a look. Devil Valley is also known as Beast King's Remains. This is a mausoleum that the king of holy beasts, Devil King, built for himself back then, and is filled with all kinds of precious resources that are already extinct in the current era. Although it has already been 100 years since Beast King's Remains was last opened, despite our meticulous intelligence and security work, news that Devil Valley is about to open still spread like wildfire. Saying this, President Chi frowned. Spies? General Yi narrowed his eyes. Spies have always existed. As the head of the intelligence department, Dark Saint Chi Fing said coldly, in fact, in recent years, I've already increased the intensity of anti-espionage investigations, and have arrested countless foreign spies. But the other side still thinks of all kinds of ways to sneak into our country, which is really hard to guard against. Speaking up to this point, Chi Fing sighed. You don't know, but the most bizarre spy I caught this year actually used a forbidden spell to shrink his body and hide himself in a capsule in order to sneak into our country. He hired a foreign student at a high price to hide the capsule in his anus. Then, luckily, when this exchange student entered the country, the chief of our investigation department, Sima Guang, used his sharp observation skills to discover that there was something wrong with this exchange student and immediately conducted a full-body check. In the end, they found this capsule and successfully intercepted the spy at the customs. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable, Dark Saint said. I was kind enough to hear about this. General Yi nodded. Was this Chief Sima Guang later rewarded? The Dark Saint said solemnly, yes, our department specially gave him a title, Sima Guang's Anal Smash. Everyone, cough cough. President Chi cleared his throat and said, as you can see, because of Beast King's Remains, not only are there all kinds of dark forces stirring up in our country, even foreign forces want to take advantage of this opportunity to fish in. Beast King's Remains is the country's precious historical resource, and every extinct resource planted in it is our precious wealth. Actually, President Chi's goal was already very clear, and everyone couldn't help nodding when they heard this. These were already extinct resources that had only appeared in Beast King's Remains, and definitely couldn't be used by anyone. The most important thing was to protect these precious resources and find a way to cultivate them so that they could grow again in the modern world. Beast King's Remains Devil Valley is a historical resource unique to our Huaxiu nation. No illegal dark forces or foreign forces have the right to enter the remains. The head of state has already given clear instructions, and what we need to do is to protect the remains so that the extinct resources inside can continue to exist, and find a way to bring some of them out so that they can grow again in the modern environment. Saying this, President Chi looked at everyone. Does anyone have any other opinions about protecting Beast King's remains? If you do, just press the red button on the table as usual. Everyone shook their heads, and this proposal was unanimously passed. President Chi was ready to move on to the next segment. At that moment, Marshal Jiang asked, Explosion Saint and Skin Saint's mission is also related to protecting the remains? That's right. President Chi was actually about to say this. Who knows how many dark forces and foreign invading forces are now eyeing Beast King's remains covetously. In order to better protect Beast King's remains, Explosion Saint and Skin Saint are currently secretly carrying out a mission directly issued by the head of state, to forge Beast King's remains. Forge Beast King's remains, everyone's hearts trembled. So there was this kind of operation. But those who are interested in entering Beast King's remains aren't ordinary people. Can they fool these people? Medicine Saint was a little doubtful. Forging Beast King's remains isn't something that happened on a whim. In fact, the head of state has already been laying out the overall situation a long time ago. The basic blueprints were drawn by the head of state himself, and Explosion Saint and Skin Saint are going together now to deal with the construction of the nomological laws. President Chi nodded with a smile. If the plan goes smoothly, the fake Beast King's remains will open after the entrance to the real remains opens, attracting illegal forces who have designs on Beast King's remains. The time difference between the real and fake remains opening is estimated to be no more than half an hour. I still think this is risky. Medicine Saint Chief Luo shook her head. President Xi smiled. You should have a little more confidence in our country's ability to make counterfeits. In the past, when things were the most difficult, we always made it through, didn't we? Chief Luo, also, in order to ensure that the plan to forge Beast King's remains and create a smokescreen can be carried out correctly. We also need the help of Old Sun's alliance of 10,000 schools, President Xi said. Secretary Sun Dakong nodded and looked at President Xi. What can I do for you? Just say it. Because God I-1 has calculated that the entrance to Devil Valley of Beast King's remains will eventually appear in Songhai City. Although the specific location still needs to be confirmed, I think Old Sun can make preparations in advance. President Xi said, I hope Old Sun can contact several high schools in Songhai City and have the headmasters organize a tour of Beast King's remains for the students to study and broaden their horizons. Secretary Dakong frowned. But what if they run into those illegal forces? How can we guarantee the students' safety? President Xi raised an eyebrow. Who told you that these students are going to enter the fake remains? Before the entire plan starts, I'll arrange for someone to leak the fake remains first. Everyone. F***K. So it was a trick. Chapter 546. Speaking up to this point, everyone already understood what President Xi meant. This was a smokescreen. They were using the students to confuse the group of people who were trying to invade illegally, and at the same time enrich the students' extracurricular lives. Unlike before, most of the younger generation of cultivators didn't have particularly lofty ideals and pursuits. Furthermore, in high school, when the Chinibu syndrome was concentrated, many students might start to get lost for various reasons, and then they would start to post all kinds of non-mainstream chicken soup in their WeChat moments and WeChat moments. Therefore, in order to reduce the occurrence of such phenomena and guide students to build a richer spiritual world and values, the Alliance of 10,000 Schools had planned many similar practical exchange activities over the years, such as the previous Spirit Sword Exchange Meet, and the upgraded version of the PUBG military training exercise. All of these were spring outings, autumn outings, and summer camps were all extracurricular activities that schools originally planned every year. This year, the Alliance of 10,000 Schools' original plan was to upgrade these extracurricular activities, and the Alliance of 10,000 Schools would reimburse them if they didn't have enough funds. Apart from Spirit Beast Gardens and the Shao family compound, which were frequently visited extracurricular activities, schools everywhere would have more space to choose from. They could even organize tours outside the city to broaden their horizons. In fact, places of historical interest were a very good choice. Songhai City Summer Camp was usually held in August. Because Songhai City's climate was a little strange, it was hottest in October, so students in Songhai City started school later than students in other urban areas, as well as winter and summer vacations. Thus, the approval of Songhai's summer camp location hadn't been completed yet. Secretary Dakong had originally planned to approve it after the Huaxiao Alliance high-level meeting, but that wasn't necessary now. He could directly approve it. As long as the students' safety can be guaranteed, I'll definitely approve of going to Beast King's remains, Secretary Dakong said. Visiting places of historical interest was part of the Alliance's plan this year to begin with, not to mention a place like Beast King's remains which opened once every 100 years, and some people might never have the chance to go in their entire lives. No matter what they could learn inside, looking around would always help broaden their horizons. Sometimes, a person's horizons could often determine how high they would go in the future. This high didn't necessarily refer to their realm, it could also refer to their spiritual foundation or achievements in other areas. In fact, President Xi had already calculated the issue of safety. Whether it was the real remains or the fake ones, when the entrance to the remains opened, they would immediately send people to set up a true immortal barrier. Ordinary people wouldn't even be able to touch the stones inside the remains. Of course, a smokescreen is just a smokescreen. In order to avoid some cunning dark forces, we have also sent people to protect the safety of the students. My suggestion is that, in addition to Secretary Sun.com, who will be organizing the student tour this time, we also send Dark Saint and the Doctor. Weapon Saint and I will use magic treasures to provide remote assistance, and if necessary, we can launch the Heavenly E satellite. In addition, Head of State 001 will also be tasked with protecting the students this time, President Chi said. The corners of Wang Ming's eyes twitched when he heard this arrangement. This protective lineup was too strong. Other than Spirit Saint.com, there was also Dark Saint Minister Ying and Medicine Saint Minister Luo. There was also Old Qi, who was assisting from afar, Weapon Saint Minister Ku, who was in charge of the magical equipment arsenal, and Head of State 001, who was in the midst of testing. 5 perfected immortals and number 001. If word of this got out, some people would definitely think that the war between the two worlds, between the human race and the demon race, was about to break out again. The last time perfected immortals had been mobilized was already 1,000 years ago, when they had joined forces to fight the demon gods who had come out of the gate between worlds. Furthermore, it was one thing for 5 perfected immortals to be mobilized, but the Heavenly E satellite would also work together. Wang Ming instantly felt that any villain who had designs on Beast King's remains would basically be dead the moment they tried to invade it. This satellite was actually a magic treasure which could condense high-density spirit power inside, and could be directly controlled to launch a Heavenly E bomb, which could directly fire a spirit power laser cannon in outer space to launch a long-range bombardment. Heavenly E satellite. It was very obvious that when the 10 generals present heard this name, they couldn't help shuddering. Heavenly E satellite, there's no need for that. Secretary Dakong wiped at his sweat. To put it bluntly, this thing was actually the nuclear bomb of the modern cultivation era. Its power was equivalent to an attack from a true immortal. If a true immortal was hit head-on, he wouldn't die, but he would lose half his life. The most important thing was that this thing was too powerful. With this one shot, Beast King's remains might directly be flattened. I also think it's a little exaggerated. Generally nodded on the side. Don't worry, everyone, it's not exaggerated at all. President Chi waved his hand. It's not a real bomb. Secretary Dakong, what do you mean? When our Heavenly E satellite was designed back then, we used live ammunition and duck gall to begin with. Live ammunition is indeed very powerful. Without the head of state's personal signature and approval, it can't be used casually. But a dud can be fired at any time. Dud, dud. The mouths of the other 10 generals present all twitched. Even Weapon Saint was startled. There's this kind of setting. Why didn't I know about it? It was his munitions factory that had manufactured this Heavenly E satellite back then. He had seen the blueprints. This dud is just a program setting, you definitely wouldn't be able to tell from the original blueprints. It turns out that none of you knew about it. President Chi smiled slightly. The effect of a dud is a little similar to a real illusion spell. Although it looks no different from firing a live ammunition, it actually doesn't produce any energy. Everyone, Wang Ming, it wasn't just the 10 generals present, even Wang Ming, who had personally been involved in setting up the program, didn't know about this. That was to say, the dud design had been completely added by Old Qi himself, and apart from the head of state, probably no one else knew about it. General Yi broke out in a sweat and silently raised his hand to ask, "Excuse me, what is the purpose of this dud design?" President Chi's answer was concise. To scare people. Everyone, it's an era of peace now, how can it be so easy to launch a Heavenly E-bomb? Since the founding of our Huashuo nation, we've pursued world peace, not world nuclear war, so the design of a dud is very necessary. A dud doesn't have any power. It won't harm anyone, but at the very least it will make a noise. President Chi went on and on. For example, when the Shao clan released that Buddha's angry fire lotus, why was it so scary? It was because that mushroom cloud was big enough and loud enough. It looked like a strong deterrent. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.